Welcome to the Smark Foundation Podcast, Episode 3. I am Aaron. This is Adam.
Yes, it is. Certainly.
And we are here to cover your weekly WWE and AEW goodness. We want to remind you all that we are on all podcast platforms, still except for Apple, but our podcast is Safari friendly, so any of our Apple users can go ahead and use Safari and be able to listen to our podcast still in the background like you normally would. We are just awaiting some processing on that. But we are on all other platforms, including Spotify and Deezer and Pandora and a few other new ones this week. We have our link tree. You can find us at Smart Foundation Podcast. And on there, you can find our merch link where we have a new hoodie up this week, as well as a coffee cup, along with our original logo t shirt and pullover hoodie. I would like to remind you all that we do not body discriminate here at the Spark Foundation podcast, and our 5X hoodie is the same price as our small hoodie. All of our clothing items are the same price, front to back, all sizes. We love you all, and you all deserve the same price for things. And we know we don't like to pay extra for getting an extra X on our shirt, and neither should you. So we have
Yeah,
that all
it's
taken.
it's garbage.
Amen. It is garbage when I got to pay $5 extra for a 2X t-shirt. That's garbage. So we don't do that here. But as usual, I'm here with Adam, and we're going to go through our weekly AEW and WWE reviews. We have the review for Wrestledream this week, which I am actually super excited about. Being the WWE guy, I still do watch AEW, and that show was something.
That was yes, we'll get into it.
We'll get into it.
Something does sum it all up. it was something. And I will say that you could imply a negative from that, but it's really not all negative. It really isn't.
No,
It was
no.
honestly mostly a very, very good show in line with the vast majority of AEW pay per views, which are very, very good shows. So, I mean, there will be things that we talk about that did not go as well, in my opinion, but we'll get to that when we get to that. The first thing that
Amen.
we need to do is cover Raw.
That's right. We're going to cover Raw first, as usual, and also we will, as always, we will have our Call It in the Ring segment at the end of the show, which Adam will go ahead and explain at that time. But I guess
Very
we're gonna.
excited for that too.
Oh yeah,
Very excited. I put a
me
lot
too.
of work into it, and you're probably not even going to hear like 3/4 of the work I put into it because I spent several nights working on it, several late nights working on it, and then last night was it, and I was like, I could have gone without like 3/4 of this, but you'll get an abbreviated version so as not to bore you all to death with the tiny little intricacies that don't matter in the long run, really. So
Amen. Well, we
it
will
will
get.
be
Yeah, it will be good. It's always good. That's like my favorite segment of the week, every week. But yeah, we'll go ahead. We're gonna kick it off and get right into the Raw review with the. What are we calling this segment, Adam?
on the lockup.
The lockup. All right, well, it's time for the lockup. It's our Raw review for the week. And CM Punk opens the show from the entrance. He says he wants to thank his fans, peers, and haters. He says he's a winner, but he doesn't feel like one. And then it's interrupted by Seth Rollins. So they kind of stare each other down, and Seth goes to the ring where he says he wants Punk to go away and heal up so that he can beat him and retire him for good. He then issues a challenge to Bronson Reed, who's the guy who put him out. And then he gets annoyed as Jay Uso's music hits for him to make his way to the ring for the first match. Not sure what happened there. I think they might have gone over a little bit. Then we kind of segue right into Jay Uso versus Xavier Woods. Uso beats Woods in a decent match, but after Woods refused to shake Jay Uso's hand, Kofi Kingston is like, "What's wrong with you?" Et cetera, et cetera. And then Braun Breaker shows up. He came out. He attacks Jay. Kofi tries to help Jay while Xavier just watches. But then Kofi catches a spear. Xavier's just sitting there watching. Braun Breaker circles the ring and hits him with a full speed spear too. And then Braun stands tall over Jay. He goes to the back. They ask him why his attitude changed from respect last week to being a jerk again this week, and he doesn't really say anything. And then we go into Sheamus versus Pete Dunne in a Donnybrook match. It was a really great brawl match with lots of furniture. There was a bar, shillelaghs, cricket bats, whiskey barrels everywhere, and I think like an old rum runner truck in there somewhere too. But they had a really nice brawl, typical brawl. Pete Dunne tried to crossface Sheamus with the shillelagh bar, which is always a good spot when they've got something in their mouth.
Yeah, it
Um,
looks great.
oh yeah, always. And then really painful. And then Sheamus takes uh, Pete Dunne up to the top of one of the stacks of barrels, and it's like two whiskey barrels high, so it's probably a good 8 feet or 9 feet. And he does the white noise off of the barrels through two tables. But that doesn't put Pete Dunne down. He recovers
My
and
boy, my boy, Pete Dunne.
he recovers and he goes. This comes the craziest finish spot I've seen in a while. He zip ties Sheamus behind his back, and then goes to do like pulls his knee pad down and goes for the knee strike. As he's coming in for the knee strike, Sheamus hops dead up on both of his feet and Brogue kicks the heck out of him. Takes his head right off, all that momentum. And then Sheamus, after he hits the Brogue kick, just kind of falls over backwards on Pete Dunne with his zip tied hands still behind his back and gets the pin. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. Then after that, we had a 10-woman tag match. Um, Let me preface this with saying this is one of the things that is going to be bad about Raw being on 2 hours. But we had a 10-woman tag match. This is the only women's match we see on the whole show. We had Natalia, Zelina Vega, Kaden and Katana, and Lara Valkyria versus the Pure Fusion Collective and Isla Dawn and Alba Fire. I can't remember which one of their names I forgot last week, but
It
it's
was it
Isla
was
Dawn and Alba Fire.
Isla Dawn. I
Okay.
remembered like 2 days later, like, oh, it's Isla Dawn. That's what it
All
was.
right. Well, so Island Alba, the Unholy Union, I believe, is the name of their tag team. But so they're the heels. The faces went over. It was really a basically like a basic big team match, but it was really short. I think it clocked in under 3 minutes for a 10-woman tag match, and then there was like a commercial break in the middle of it and everything. Like
That's
it was
like
weird.
Divas era length.
Yeah, it was like a Divas era length match, and like some girls got their stuff in before the commercial break, and then you could tell they worked through the commercial break, and then some got after. And I mean, I know it's a live show and you got to work through the commercial break, but man, 10 women, only women's match. We'll talk about that some more later. You can obviously see where I'm leading with that. And then for our main event for Raw, we had the World Heavyweight Championship match. Gunther versus Sami Zayn. I really thought this was a good match. It should have been on the PLE in place of one of the bad matches of the two that were there. But I understand why it was on Raw. I know, how the PLE scheduling and all that stuff. So they had a really good match, a nice brawl. I believe Sammy was going for a haluva kick, maybe the second or third one, and Gunther caught him in a sleeper and put him down. And it was a referee stoppage via the sleeper. So Gunther has, I guess, cashed in his ticket to the redacted event that we won't cover. So with Raw, two things I really like just to kick it off. I really like that Donnybrook match, man. They were brutal to one another. You can tell, being in the business, sometimes you see certain things. And one of the things that I've seen is universally true. And even, fans know this, is that if two guys are friends in real life, the match can be way better and way more brutal because of the comfort level. Um,
Look at Sean and Razor. You
exactly.
know,
Exactly.
I mean, even like Kevin Nash's one of his top 3 matches was the Good Friends Better Enemies match with Sean on his way out the door to WCW.
Right.
Like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, based on this match, I would tell you that Pete Dunne and Sheamus are probably really good friends. It was
Wouldn't surprise me.
gnarly, man. It was brutal in the best ways. I've never been a huge Sheamus fan. I do like him. I'm a fan of his now, but I was never like, oh my God, Sheamus. Especially when he plays a heel, he's really good at it, and I dislike him. I'm supposed to, but this match was really good. I
I think
expected a
he's another one of those guys that he's been around so long that he's got that equity with the crowd that we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, where it's like, yeah, we could boo him, but we just kind of like, he's comforting. It's like
yeah,
he's been around so long. It's like he's comfort wrestling almost to a lot of fans. Like, oh, it's Sheamus. We like Sheamus. We grew up with Sheamus.
right.
I think it's one of those things because you remember when he first came onto the scene, he was in WWE CW for like 3 months, and then he was on Raw for a month, and then he beat Cena for the WWE title in a tables match, and it was jarring, and they thought they were making a star when really all they did was breed resentment for the guy.
Right. Very
So
Romanesque.
yeah,
But yeah, so I really expect well, once the zip ties went on, I 100% expected a Pete Dunne win. I was like, oh man, here he's tied up. This is how they do it. So when Sheamus hopped up and Road kicked him, I was genuinely surprised, which does not happen in wrestling very often these days, especially watching as long as we have.
yeah,
It's kind of hard to surprise us. You genuinely have to do something new and innovative to surprise a wrestling fan who's been watching wrestling more than 20 years. It's just how it works. You have to. So yeah, it was really surprising. And I always like surprises. So my number one thing I really liked about Raw was the surprise. The Pete Dunne and Sheamus Donnie match was really good and had a really different ending than you normally would have seen for something like that. So I really enjoyed it. I mean, usually, that match under Vince, maybe even under Tony Khan, that match would have ended at the white noise through the tables.
yeah.
Like it probably would have just ended there. So
Well,
the
maybe not Tony Khan. I
uh,
have a feeling that he would be like, hey, go out, you and you do whatever you want for 18 minutes. You go over, fill it in yourself. Like,
fair.
unless there was like a big story beat that he
Mm-hmm.
wanted to push. Tony Khan seems to mostly be hands off with. I mean, and that's pretty obvious by the fact that everybody like nobody talks about the spots they're doing. Everybody does the
Mm-hmm.
same spots. Everybody there's always going to be a dive. There's always going to be a poison rana if there's somebody who's athletic enough to pull it off. It's like
Oh
they don't
man.
consult each other.
We will talk about the amount of police and ranas later for sure.
Yeah, well, well we,
But
we may touch on it.
yeah, I think we will. Another thing I really liked Gunther and Sami Zayn. It was a good match, man. Sami Zayn always puts on a really good match, and Gunther is slowly but surely maybe becoming my favorite title holder of 2024. Like he is a sight to behold. He's something else. I mean, his body work is obvious since he came into the Fed, and his in ring work has always been top notch, but it just keeps getting better. I really like him as an arrogant German heel. I really enjoy it. So yeah, I mean, Gunther and Zayn was really great. Something I didn't like. I don't like Raw being 2 hours. I'll just say it right there. I have
That might be a hot take,
it might
honestly.
be, but I like Raw better than SmackDown, and I think the reason I liked Raw better than SmackDown is because they had that third hour to give the show an extra half hour to kind of pace things out and let stuff breathe. And SmackDown, it's a problem that I have with SmackDown is that it like will come back, like somebody will make an entrance for a match and then it'll go to commercial and we'll come
Mm,
back from commercial, and instead of going to the entrance for the next entrance, we'll go to like a 30-second promo backstage and then they'll throw it to the second entrance of the match, which
yeah,
and that's
formatting
common.
is
Just
super screwy.
yeah, I don't like the formatting of SmackDown. And this episode of Raw really kind of leaned into that SmackDown formatting, especially with like Seth Rollins is cutting a promo about Bronson Reed, and then Jey Uso shows up, which cool. Let's see Jey Uso and Seth Rollins have a match. It had nothing to do with that. And Jey Uso's just showing up for his match that's supposed to start the show. And so did they go long? Was he supposed to interrupt him and nothing happened? Uh, yeah, I felt like they weren't exactly sure what and where to cut things for this episode. And so we ended up with like this 10-woman tag match and the 2 hour
The
format.
way you describe it, it's almost like when somebody is accepting an award and they play them off because their speech is going on too long.
Yeah, exactly. Like maybe Seth was used to being able to let that first, maybe Seth is probably used to letting that first promo breathe. That's usually a 15-minute segment. Punk,
Mm.
he had come out and stared Punk down and headed to the ring by minute 5. And then by like minute 9 or 10, here comes Jey Uso. So I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen with Raw going into the future until we get to Netflix in January. But I know that, like, I'm not really I'm not like I'll say this. I enjoyed the matches. I enjoyed the storyline bumps they were doing. I enjoyed all of the content of the show. I just didn't like the length or the format of it. It's I mean, heck, it's I should like it more because Raw being an hour less a week is more time for me to do other things and not be watching wrestling, which um, it's not a job. I'm still going to watch wrestling and I love watching wrestling, but when you're watching 10 or 12 hours of wrestling a week, 1 hour less is sometimes a really good thing.
That may
And
be an extra hour of sleep.
yeah, it might be an extra hour of sleep. But in this case, I think that second hour or that third hour is preventing detriment.
Mm.
It felt rushed, and that's just the way that's the best way I can describe it. Is it felt
And
rushed?
the funny thing is that they're probably going to figure out how to repace that right as they're going back to 3 hours on Netflix.
Yeah, that's the problem. They only have like 2 months or so, or three
Yeah.
months before they're going to be back on Netflix, and they're going to work out this pacing, and the wrestlers are going to get used to it, and they're going to have to
It's
go,
almost like
okay,
USA is screwing with them.
a little bit. It feels like, but yeah, that's the only thing I really didn't like was the pacing and just it being 2 hours. And I think that all of the problems that I actually had with the show were because it was 2 hours. One women's match, it's a 10-woman tag match because you got to cram everybody into one match because you don't have time. And then they put a commercial break in the middle of it, which I really am not a fan of putting commercial break in the middle of matches, especially if it's going to only be like a minute or two on either side of the commercial break for the whole match. So like but
That means
that's
half the matches in commercial.
yeah. And so it's all but all of the complaints I have lead back to the formatting and the time issue. Um Other than that, I really thought that I'm intrigued by this whole Braun Breaker thing. I'm intrigued by all of that. I'm intrigued by what's going to happen with him and Jey Uso, and I'm intrigued by what's going to happen with Kofi and Xavier. Like, is the New Day going to break up? Are we going to get a WrestleMania match out of those two? I think it'd probably be great. It would hurt my heart a little bit if the New Day broke up. I'm intrigued on both sides of the story. Braun and Jay, Xavier and Kofi. I'm intrigued on both. I thought that they meshed them together and forwarded both stories really well. I thought that, having Braun come out and do the attack, having Kofi, try to play the hero, and Xavier kind of be like, nah, forget that. Like
Yeah.
they they structured it in such a way that it did push forward both stories, even though they had to be crammed into one segment together and coexist with one another. So yeah, I mean that's the Raw review for the week. Other than the pacing, I really liked it. I thought it was a good show. The matches were all pretty killer. Yeah, I mean, except for that women's match, they just didn't have time to develop. It's not like it was a bad match. There's 10 of them and they didn't have time for everybody to get their stuff in and create a crowd feeling and a story and all that, which is hard to do in a 10-woman tag anyway. So
I'm
I'm going to
wondering
give
what
them a
they
break.
did when the cameras weren't rolling, like before or after the show. Like, did they give them the same amount of content as if they were at a 3 hour Raw? Or
I should probably look into that, but I hope so. I would hope they would, because these people probably bought tickets when
yeah,
Raw was still 3 hours,
yeah,
and
I really hope so.
you
Yeah,
know, they're expecting probably a 4 hour sit down, because you purchase a ticket to a 3 hour event, you're expecting a fourth hour,
pretty
at the
much.
So there people are buying tickets to Raw expecting a 4 hour sit down, and they're only getting 2 hours. I really hope they are doing stuff on either side of the show for people, at least giving them something, dark matches or whatever,
Yeah.
to make up for that third hour that they now don't get to have because they bought, and even though they bought their tickets when Raw was 3 hours.
When did they tape Speed? Is that both brands or
I don't know, man.
I like it's
I
not like I watched
I
Speed,
can't.
but
Yeah, I would
like
say
I
I
know
can't
it's
say I've
something
ever
they're
watched
doing.
it. Yeah, I know they're taping it during one of the shows. I'm not sure. I'm just not sure which one. I would say probably SmackDown because I think the ropes are blue. So,
Okay.
but I haven't really seen a lot of Speed. I mean, even Andrade being on there and being their champion didn't draw me to it, and I like Andrade. So,
Candice
um,
LeRae.
I like Candice LeRae too,
Yeah.
but not enough to go seek out
Honestly,
Speed,
like
man. Unfortunately,
I don't know who that's for. Like
I don't
they're
know
three
either.
minute matches, man. Like who is that for? Like I don't know.
I'm not sure who it's for. I'm not sure. Like, I mean, I liked Dark and Elevation, but they were like structured shows
Yeah, and most
with
of those
they
were
were hour
squash
long
matches
structured shows.
anyway.
Yeah,
Most
they
of
were
those are
spot.
squashes anyway, so you didn't mind that they were 3 minutes.
Yeah,
You
I didn't mind
know,
at
like
all. But there was also like storyline bumps in there. And if you're a real big wrestling fan, like what, and I mean, if anybody knows me, they know when I start something new, I get obsessive about it. So
yeah,
when CM Punk came back to AEW and AEW was a new thing to me, yeah, I watch Dark and Elevation every week along with all their other content, pay per views and Dynamite because it was just Dynamite, Dark and Elevation then. But yeah, I watched Dynamite, I watched Dark, I watched Elevation, but also a lot of people that I know were on Dark and Elevation,
yeah,
like Gino Told You So and Justin Taylor and a bunch of other like a lot of Ryzen.
yeah,
Jake Logan
yeah,
was on there. A lot of the guys that were on there getting squashed are dudes who are no lie, champions at places that I work,
Oh yeah.
and
I mean,
so
we popped hard for when Papa Don was on there a couple of times because he's big in the indie scene here. Like, I mean, he's kind of at the end of his career, but like, it's like, oh,
yeah,
that's the Greek god Papa Don.
yeah,
Like, he's getting squashed in 2 minutes, but it's great because he's on. I
right,
mean,
and you can
AR
tell
Fox
the
was on. Like,
yeah, oh dude,
great
AR
inside.
Fox. Yeah,
Dude,
dude, there was a lot of people on there before they got signed. For Lady Frost was on there before she got an
yeah,
all elite graphic.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of people actually on there that got a good crowd reaction. I think I'm not sure if the Renegade Sisters have gotten a graphic yet, but they dang well should have because
They
they're still being
should.
used. They're still being used for
Yeah.
squash matches. What, a year or two after
They
Dark
Yeah,
Dynamite,
Robin
after
Renegade was on
like
Robin
just a
Renegade
couple
was
weeks ago, right?
on Collision a few weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So they need an AEW
Yeah, she
graphic.
was fed
Tony
to Anna
Khan.
Jay.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, yeah. If they don't have a graphic, Tony Khan, get them one, please, because I've been watching them get squashed for 2 years, and I really enjoy their work. I think they do what they do well.
Yeah.
But you've been using them like that for 2 years. Give them a graphic or cut them loose, homie. Like,
Yeah.
come on.
Uh
Uh,
I think it's not Robin, the other one. What's her name?
it's Robin and oh, I'm a jerk because I don't
Ryan.
remember, and I like them both, but she's injured or something, right?
Yeah, she's injured. Yeah, that's what I was gonna bring up. It's like I
Yeah,
know she's injured right now,
yeah.
but I mean being an identical twin in wrestling is such a blessing.
Oh yeah, of course.
Such a blessing. Because twin magic never really gets old.
No, it doesn't. It
Because
doesn't.
you know why? It's because nobody but twins can do it.
Yeah.
Like,
Which is why it's
so
like
it's
Kurt
still
Angle and his
novel.
brother,
Yeah,
or or the Usos, or the
yeah,
Renegades, and or the Jacksons.
yeah, to
Like
a
it,
degree.
like three or four teams. I mean, they look enough like each other when I got is it Nick? I guess Nick is Nick the one that dyes his beard like Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, so when Nick doesn't have his beard dyed, they look enough alike that they can totally pull off twin match. Now, if
yeah.
Nick's
They're
off
usually
being
wearing something different though, so
yeah,
they could, but they don't lean into it.
yeah. Like I
Um,
think when they did the Freddie Mercury thing at Wembley and they were both wearing the same colors and everything, that would have
yeah,
been a perfect
that
time
could have worked. Yeah,
to do the twin magic
I still
spot.
can't believe that Eric wasn't Kurt's twin, but he still fooled everybody
Looks
all the
so
time.
much like him, dude.
Like it's completely believable that you would get them confused for each other.
Right.
100%.
I just watched that spot like yesterday or something. I was watching a documentary or a what culture video or something, and they were talking about that spot, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that Kurt Angle even had a brother.
Yeah.
So much stuff happens in wrestling; it's hard to remember it all. But then you see something, you're like, oh yeah, I remember that happening. It's
Yeah.
like you're pulling it out of the archives. Like, hey,
Yep.
remember this?
Yep. That's a lot of content to try and store in one person's brain.
Yeah, it is a lot
Like
of
it's
content.
you're gonna miss more than you're gonna forget way more than you remember. It's just gonna happen just by the nature of it. It's just too much. And we remember the stuff that sticks with us because it's memorable, because it's meant to be memorable. So like, some random 5 minute squash match, between two people who don't have a story, you're building up. Why would your brain bother to remember that?
Mm-hmm.
But uh, Kurt Angle subbing his brother in for the first time and it being a big storyline moment. Yeah, you'll remember that.
Right, right,
So
exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't remember a lot of squash matches, but sometimes I'll see a screenshot of like an old WWF squash match. Like when
yeah,
they say like, oh, remember you see this person was doing WWF squash matches like 20 years before they were in WWF or whatever. And then
yeah,
you see that, you're like, you know what? I actually remember that
yeah,
guy, that specific person. But it's always a fleeting memory. It's like, oh, I remember this
yeah,
match happening. Not like I don't remember what
yeah,
happened or who he turned
yeah,
into, but I remember this match happened. Like so that happens a lot. But yeah, that's the Raw review for the week. I think timing is their only issue right now. But now it's time for the shine. Huh?
yeah. Time for the shine.
All right, let's get that tag.
Okay, so Dynamite was on a different night and time than it normally was. It was on Tuesday as opposed to Wednesday, and it was at 9 instead of 8. So it was already kind of weird from the off. But that being said, this show starts off even weirder for Dynamite because it opened with a bunch of segments before the first commercial break. Segment number one, backstage promo with John Moxley and whatever they're calling his faction, whether it's Blackpool Combat Club or whatever. Mox says Bryan Danielson is self-destructive and he needs to fix the situation. Admits that Danielson is dangerous, especially when backed into a corner, and that he has to be ready for Bryan Danielson's dark side. He and his followers are too strong to be fought off. Hopes one day Bryan will understand. It has to be this way. Yada yada yada. Stakes are too high. Segment number two, in pretty much in response to that, but not really. Pre-tape Bryan Danielson promo. It was earlier from online, so actually this was probably released beforehand online before the segment that opened this show would air. But he said he and Yuta will run through Claudio and Pac, then go on to Wrestledream. He's done supporting Claudio, despite the fact that he's been supporting him the entire time that they've been in the same wrestling organizations together. Segment number three, finally something in the ring. Darby Allin comes to confront Brody King. He wastes no time in calling Brody out. Darby reminisces about the old days, says he got Brody his job at AEW after Ring of Honor closed, and says Brody wants his spot, but he can't have it. Brody retorts by saying that Darby has a death wish and claims Darby needs someone to save him from himself, which sounds kind of familiar, actually, considering the promo that we just heard from Moxley, but whatever.
Right.
Allen challenges him to put him out of his misery, essentially. He slaps him, and then he gets choked. He gets choked out, almost choked out, but he snuck presumably the same rock that he had in that promo last week where he was sitting on the car and hits him right in the face and actually draws blood. I'm not sure if he bit his tongue or bust his lip or whatever, but he was bleeding. And then a whole bunch of referees pulled him apart. Segment number four, Renee interviews Jake Roberts and Lance Archer. Don Callis comes into the frame and basically announces that he's exchanged talent with Jake the Snake. So that follows up on that weird segment from last week's Collision. And he gets Lance Archer, who looks kind of like weirded out about it. He's like, all right, bye, Snake Dad. Hi, sex toy dad. And then a commercial. No matches to begin Dynamite. Very strange formatting for them. Segment number 5, when they come back from commercial, Renee interviews Daniel Garcia as he's coming to the arena. I don't know why he's late for work, but he's just arriving, and he's got his luggage and everything. And Garcia says that he'll explain his absence of a few weeks later in the ring. Finally, we get our first match. Hologram versus Commander. Commander came to the ring without Alex Abrahantes, by the way, so I don't know whether that plays into it or not. We'll talk about the match later because it was stellar. But unsurprisingly, Hologram, who's get on the push here, he gets the win. And then afterwards, Jake Roberts shows up on the stage to distract him as Roosh, who is presumed to be the talent that got traded for Lance Archer, comes in and with the Beast Mortos and with Dralistico and beats Hologram down. So they didn't drop that thread with Roosh being part of the Don Callis family. Like, he was barely in it, but at least they didn't drop that thread and they made a switch. And I think this will be good for them because Jake speaks English. So if for no other reason that Jake, one of the best promos of all time, is going to be cutting promos on behalf of this largely monolingual stable.
Well, they do speak 2 languages because Mortos only speaks
he speaks beasts.
So somebody who speaks words will actually be very helpful.
But yes, I'll go back to this later. Segment number 6 was a recap of TV time last week, so nothing like super new. But Lexi Nair is interviewing Mark Briscoe, and he cuts like the simplest, most believable 30-second promo. He basically says, look, time for games are over. You brought up my brother. I don't care about the title as much as I care about how much I'm going to hurt you. And that's all you need.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Segment 7 was Daniel Garcia's foreshadowed in-ring promo. He thanks the fans and Tony Khan for their time. He has a lot to think about. He wanted to look everybody in the eye and tell everybody that he's staying where the best wrestle, AEW, which probably would have come off better if he had been forthright about there being a bidding war for him and him. Like this came off as like, if you didn't know, you would probably have been confused. Like, I knew, but that's at this point, it's kind of my job to know. So, anyway, he said there's going to be a new Daniel Garcia, one that starts changing the company, one that's not going to get little brothered all the time. And he's going to start by getting gold. He said the feeling is restored, which has been a common theme over the past several months. Really, it's been kind of the mantra of AEW since about April or so. So that one gets repeated there. Segment number 8 is a pre-tape promo from Swerve for Swerve Strickland. Basically a recap of the upcoming feud with MVP and crew. And they announced that Swerve is returning at Wrestledream to say hi, basically. It's like, hey, I'm back. Commercial. And then segment number 9, Renee interviews Mercedes Moné with Camille. Renee doesn't want to call X either, which I find funny. That proves she's one of us. Love you, Renee.
We love Renee.
Oh, who doesn't? She's fantastic. She's the best. Monet says she'll best Emi Sakura tonight. Says she's beaten Queens before. that kind of thing, which is fine. That's fine. Everybody knows what she's alluding to there. You bring in more people, the more references that you make, really, of that kind, as
Yeah.
opposed to, like that wasn't a snipe. That was just giving the results.
Mm-hmm.
She did do that. She did do that. She didn't mention anything about Charlotte's character. She didn't mention anything about her as a person. She just said, in character, I've beaten the queen before. That's fine by me. I'm okay with those kind of references because it just builds the current match. Segment number 10, backstage. Daniel Garcia is shaking hands with everybody who's like, oh, we're so glad you're staying. Shibata comes over with his phone and he's like, yeah, so I'll be the TNT title holder come Wrestledream. You've got a shot as far as I'm concerned if I win. So that was kind of cool. Match number 2, finally, was Willow Nightingale versus Saraya versus Nyla Rose versus Jamie Hayter with a world title match at Wrestledream on the line. This was changed. This was originally Willow Nightingale versus Britt Baker, but Britt Baker got a super duper case of strep throat to the point where she had to go to the hospital and get an IV. So that must have been some crazy strep throat. She's, she released a video a couple days later saying that she's essentially fine, although she is stranded in Florida because, most Floridians are. Shout out to everybody who's survived the hurricane. Hope everybody's doing okay. And the match is good. We'll talk about that later too. Willow wins, unsurprisingly, after a Death Valley driver on Saraya through a table that was set up in the corner. She drags her back out of the corner and pins both her and Harley Cameron, who was not a participant in this match, but was a participant in this match at the same time. Afterwards, Mariah attacks Willow with a headbutt and lashes her with the title belt because that's what people do now. They just
Man.
her. I mean, it would hurt. It would hurt. That's a heavy thing with metal, with corners and stuff like that. It would hurt. I don't really particularly care for the imagery though. Like you kind of have to think about it. Would that hurt? And you come to the conclusion, yes, but it's like, just get a chair.
Except she laid Willow's face open. And that, yeah.
Segment number 11 was backstage promo with the Learning Tree. Jericho and company, they're walking backstage and they confront Rocky Romero about being a latecomer into the conglomeration after that group has been together a few months. They're only inviting him now, trying to sow the seeds of doubt and stuff like that. Match number 3 was the returning Jay White versus Cody Chun. It was a squash match, but actually Jay White was pretty giving. I thought, like he let Cody get some shine in. But yeah, I mean it was a showcase for Jay White at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. Afterwards, Jay gets on the mic and says there's 2 guys he needs to avenge, knocking him off the world title path, and Hangman is one of them. Doesn't say what the second one is, who the second one is rather. I guess we'll find out later because he still hasn't to this day. I read something that says that he's not going to let him know until he's upon him because, Jay White is a cerebral character. That makes sense for him.
Yeah.
I also have my last note for that is Juice is still unhinged.
Yeah, he is. I love it.
Yeah, so they make Hangman and Swerve at Wrestledream too. Segment number 12 is a backstage promo with Hook. He says he's done chasing the guy who attacked Taz. He nearly kills Kip Sabian, who's just walking by, not minding his own business. He lets Kip go, and then Christian Cage comes along and says, "Hey, have you seen Kip Sabian?" And Hook, to his credit, he's like, "No, I haven't." So that's good of him. Cage says that he sympathizes with Hook on the loss of his father because he has that dead daddy fetish.
Oh yeah.
Commercial break, and then segment number 13, Renee interviews Mariah May, but she doesn't. Like they're backstage. Mariah May gets on the mic and is immediately pounced out of frame by Willow Nightingale. Um, and it's just says Mariah will beat the former champs that she just beat. Match number 4, double title match. Both of Mercedes Monet's championships, the TBS title and the New Japan Strong Women's Championship are on the line versus Emi Sakura. The finish comes with the statement maker, which used to be known as bank statement for those, she hasn't finished too many women with that. So putting it out there, it's the statement maker now.
Okay.
Yeah, Camille sweeps the leg as Sakura's hitting the ropes, which leads to Monet getting the submission victory. Afterwards, they try to double team Emi, but Chris Statlander makes the save. Again, no reason for the babyface turn, no nothing, no explanation. It's just, that being said, she has kind of a cool stare down with Camille, kind of a little scrap with her. That is a match I would be interested in seeing. And we'll talk about that and the hot tag. Segment number 14, Renee interviews Private Party and Stokely Hathaway. Stokely offers up his services to Private Party, but they refuse because he's a little, nosy Nelly. And Private Party goes on, mostly Zay. I don't think Quinn's doing any talking lately. It's all Zay.
Yeah.
But he says that they're basically desperate for this title shot, for this title win. So they're prepared to do whatever they have to. Segment number 15, Tony Schiavone interviews Will Ospreay in the ring as a recap of last week's match and the aftermath with the tag team title match with the screwdriver and the holding. Ospreay calls out Callis, who arrives with his black hole music. Callis tries to distract him with nostalgia, but Will's having none of it. Callis eventually relents and admits to sending Takeshita in to beat the crap out of him. Callis slaps Ospreay. Takeshita saves him. There's a standoff with Fletcher, who is very upset about this whole thing. But he leaves the screwdriver. He leaves with the screwdriver, rather. He's given it by Callis, but he doesn't use it, and he leaves the ring with it. Ricochet makes the final save and gives Ospreay his belt back, but not after taking a good long look at it. Segment number 16, Top Flight backstage promo. They're just somewhere backstage, looks like almost like a parking garage. And Layla Gray actually does something for once by confronting Action Andretti after he blames Top Flight for not winning their number 1 contender match. So there's a little bit of dissension there about the direction of where their little faction is going. After the commercial, segment number 17 is backstage promo with Jack Perry, who says that Katsuyori Shibata has a turkey leg in his trunks. I don't have anything more to say about that. Yeah, we're gonna move on from that. Match number 5, Bryan Danielson and Wheeler Yuta versus Pac and Claudio Castagnoli. Final countdown on Dynamite. They're really pushing that this really may be, the last time that we see Danielson wrestle on Dynamite. Claudio doesn't want to hit Yuta throughout most of the match. Even after Yuta slaps him in the face, he keeps trying to restrain him rather than hurt him. That's pretty much the whole match, really. After the distraction by Maria Shafir later on allows Pac to get the ring hammer that he loves so much, the ring bell hammer. Yuta intercepts it, though, which allows Danielson to get the submission with the label lock on Pac. Afterwards, Danielson attacks Mox on the outside to the back. Like, they go all the way to the back. Shafir beats up Yuta at ringside, leading to Claudio beating him with a hammer. Beats it mostly midsection kind of deal. He doesn't hit him in the face, but he does, basically like, all right, well, if this is the lesson you need to learn, bam. Danielson stands tall at the end, but noticeably he comes into the ring to eventually save him after dealing with Mox in the back, but he's doing the yes chants in the ring, and Yuta is just kind of laying there dying. It's a weird image.
Yeah.
As far as the recap that goes, like I thought that the lucha match was awesome. Commander and Hologram tore it up. It was fantastic. Let me see where my notes are. Where are they?
That freaking power bomb, dude. Holy
Jeez
crap.
Louise. Yeah. Like I couldn't believe what I was seeing. At one for our listeners who may not have seen the match, there's at one point Hologram is on the outside and Commander does his tightrope walking thing on the top rope. Hologram sees this and intercepts it by getting up onto the ring apron and then springboarding on the top rope, looking to Hurricane Rana Commander off the rope, but they both jump at each other. Commander catches him and power bombs him all the way to the mat, and it looked incredible. It was amazing. It was absolutely stellar. Like I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Really, there was a lot of other great stuff too. Like I love Hologram Suicide Dive because it always like pushes the guy like 5 feet.
Oh yeah, they always end up like halfway up the ramp whenever he hits somebody.
It's crazy. There was a Muda lock that got countered in a weird way that I'd never seen before. There was excellent technical wrestling all throughout. There was a reverse Spanish fly from the second row where that's the only way I could. This match was absolutely incredible, and like you should go out of your way to see it. The other thing, the women's four-way was a lot of fun, lots of plunder, taking advantage of the fact that there were no DQs. Harley Cameron is fantastic as always. She's the only serviceable thing about the Outcast act at this point. Like if Saraya was by herself, nobody would care because nobody wants to like her. But Harley Cameron, at the very least, makes you care enough that you want to boo the crap out of her. Willow winning was, I mean, actually, I think it served her better being this version of the match than the Britt Baker match because instead of beating one former world champion, she beat three, in the same match. So I feel like it actually was an upgrade. It always reminded me of something that that Bruce Pritchard said on Something to Wrestle With about Vince McMahon's mindset sometimes about when they had to make substitutions on the house show circuit. Like if somebody was sick or injured at the last minute or whatever, but they were advertised for the show, then you don't want to lose those people who came to see that person. So what you do is you get a substitute that's on the same level or better. And that's what happened here. Is like they couldn't make the match they wanted to, so they actually made it better. Yeah. So I feel like that was a win for them. One of the bigger negatives that I found with the show, though, was like there was no follow through on Hook finding Taz's dad attacker, like nope at all. Like they had the segment, and that was it. Like that should have been, in my opinion, that should have been something that ran through the whole show until he eventually found him. Now it seems like they're gonna. It seems like they're gonna draw this out and make it a bigger mystery. Maybe I don't know. That seems to be the. I mean, that's not how they set it up, though. They set it up as, oh yeah, he's gonna get him, and then he didn't.
I thought he was going to get him on this episode too, or at least find out who it was. And since they didn't, or something, like the only thing I can think right now, just based on what I saw on the screen, is it Christian Cage?
I mean, I assumed it was Christian Cage from the off because the week prior when it happened, Hook cut that promo saying he was going to find the guy and beat him to death, and then immediately after that, Chris Cage cut a promo that ended with the phrase "hook, line, and sinker." Like it's clearly meant to broadcast that you were at least supposed to assume that it was Christian Cage. Now, I have my own theory that maybe that's a red herring because of stuff that happened at Wrestledream. So
Hmm.
maybe we'll get into that later.
Yeah, we'll get into that later a little bit.
But
But
back
yeah,
to the positive stuff. The in ring storytelling telling this episode was fantastic. Notably in the Emi Sakura department, like she
mhm.
really that match really picked up in the last like 5 minutes, largely
Yeah,
due to her. Like
yeah.
she's really good at that kind of stuff. And then Claudio and Yuta, their storytelling in the match was, Claudio, he didn't want to hit Yuta. He didn't, it's like he's like his son, like he doesn't want to do this, but Yuta's forcing him to, like, and he eventually riled him up and riled him up and riled him up to the point where Claudio's like, all right, fine. If you don't want, if there's no other way, this
Hmm.
is the way I get through to you, then this is how, like, I thought it was fantastic for somebody like Claudio kind of gets lumped in with a lot of guys in terms of being more of a spot guy than a storytelling guy, and that's clearly not the case.
No.
Like, just because he does impressive stuff doesn't mean that he doesn't weave the storytelling elements in there that he needs to, and this was a perfect example of that. It was
Hmm.
great stuff.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. One thing that Emmy Soccer, that thing. Okay, so she went into the corner after Mercedes and went in between the ropes, and then
Yeah.
Mercedes had hopped out and did the cutter.
Mm-hmm.
I popped hard. I was like, finally, Mercedes is, for
Yeah.
me at least, showing me like, okay, there is that, there's Sasha, there she is.
Yeah. Yeah. That was probably the best match Mercedes Monet has had since she won the TBS title.
I
Honestly,
would
her
agree.
match with Willow was good,
Her match
but
with
like
Will
this
was a
was
good
probably
one.
the best one was since that point.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, I'd go with that too. Yeah, it was really good, man. I enjoyed it. So, like, yeah, all right. Well, it's
All right,
time for
let's take
what
it
is
to
the
the
next one?
face in peril.
Face in Peril. All right, here we go. All right, here we go with the Face in Peril, our weekly SmackDown review, at least this week. Um, so Jimmy Uso opens the show with a promo. He just returned to the last pay per view, so here he is to explain his absence, I guess. The new bloodline shows up pretty quickly before he says much of anything. Roman then shows up. He runs them off and he joins Jimmy in the ring. They have a bit of a conversation. Jimmy insinuates that it might be time to reconcile with Jay, and Roman acts apprehensive about that. Commercial break. We come back. We've got a U.S. title match with LA Knight and Carmelo Hayes. It's a decent match. LA Knight goes over after a reversal into a blunt force trauma. During the match, Andrade showed up and he's making fun of Carmelo and like distracting him. And then at the end of the match, after Carmelo's lost, Andrade's standing outside the ring making fun of him for being a loser. After that, we're going to another match, but Kevin Owens interrupts the entrance and he comes out and he's complaining about Cody Rhodes. Then Randy Orton shows up and he's trying to play peacemaker. There's some referees and stuff show up and they're trying to get Kevin Owens out of there. He's fighting them off. Orton comes up behind him to try to calm him down and he elbows Orton in the head, at which point Orton lays him out. So Orton attacks him, lays him out. It looks like, Kevin Owens is mad at everybody. Um, then they
It's a
go to
matter of
another
time.
break. Yeah. Then they go to another break. And the previous match that was starting the entrance was for a women's tag team match. Um, Lash Legend and Jakara Jackson are whose entrance was interrupted. They are in the ring at this point, and now Jade and Bianca are coming out with the titles. Jade and Bianca won in what was basically like a 2 or 3 minute squash match. It really wasn't anything to write home about. Then Nia Jax came out for a promo for a redacted event that we won't talk about. And she was interrupted by Naomi, who wanted a match. Um, they went to commercial then, and when they come back from commercial, the match was already in progress. So it's Naomi versus Nia, Naomi versus Nia. Liv Morgan and Judgment Day are ringside. There's a few other people ringside kind of watching the match. And Tiffany Stratton's there, of course, because she's with Nia. Raquel, who's with Judgment Day now, takes the briefcase from Tiffany and she uses it on Nia. And then Naomi uses that, Nia being dazed from being hit with the case, to power bomb Nia, which is crazy. Like Naomi power bombed Nia and picked up the win. So Naomi now has a pinfall
Wow.
win over the champion, where Bailey has failed twice in the last 2 consecutive matches. So this is building an interesting dynamic between these friends. Um, Afterwards, Liv and Raquel are kind of just laughing, and then Rhea just kind of shows up out of nowhere, and she doesn't just take Liv and Raquel to the house; she takes everybody to the house. Like she is out to, after her loss at the pay per view, she is out to beat everybody up, and she basically did beat everybody up that was present. So
Why were they there on SmackDown though? Half of these women are Raw women, right?
don't know, man. Don't know. Yeah, Judgment Day's a Raw act. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Judgment Day's a
Yeah.
Raw. I don't know. Maybe the only thing I can think is Raquel, and the Raquel and Tiffany interaction makes me think maybe Raquel is still actually a SmackDown roster. I'm not sure. I'd have to maybe go look at the rosters and see if Raquel's still under SmackDown.
Yeah.
But maybe she's gonna try to take the briefcase away from Tiffany in a more literal sense than taking it away from her during this match. Then we came back, and we then after that, we go to another commercial break. We come back, and they're outside the arena, and Owens is beating up Orton outside the arena. Not a whole lot of context to it, just kind of a fight scene outside. And then they come back into the arena, and the Bloodline is entering for a Jimmy Uso versus Solo Sikoa match. This is our main event of the night. Um, Solo beat Jimmy after Bloodline interference. I mean, I don't know how many times I have to say that in my fandom of wrestling. Like, someone defeated somebody because the Bloodline interfered. This is like every Bloodline match. We'll talk about it more here in just a second. But the Bloodline attack, when the match is over, the Bloodline attack. Jimmy Reigns comes in to make the save, but the numbers game is too much for them. Even though they have like hundreds of allies, the numbers game becomes too much. No one shows up, and Reigns and Uso are left laying as the show ends. Um, Things I liked about this. I really liked Naomi getting a win over Nia. I liked the power bomb. I thought that was cool, man. I really liked it.
I know.
Uh,
The idea of anybody power bombing Nia Jax is like, holy cow, that's a lot of woman. Like,
yeah,
and I
on
mean that
one.
respectfully. That
Oh yeah,
that works to her favor. But like, uh, I don't think it's insulting to assume that nobody could have done it in the women's division anyway. Like,
right.
that's impressive.
It is pretty impressive, especially considering the size disparity between the two of them.
Yeah.
Um, it's almost a Hogan and Andre level size disparity, like just with the
Yeah.
two. I mean, they're not as big as either of those people, but the difference between them two is pretty much spot on with
Proportional.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Naomi's doing the the promo and tell her she wants a match with her, and she's like, "Don't look down at me when I'm talking up at you." And I mean, they're like showing them at profile, and she's literally looking up, and
Hmm.
Naya's looking down at her. So there's
Yeah.
the legitimate size disparity there. But yeah, I mean, the match was good. I had the same kind of question as you, kind of, where I'm not sure what Judgment Day and all those people are doing there. Like, I don't get it. I guess we'll find out. Maybe they want Raquel to have the SmackDown Women's Championship so they can really have all the gold, even though they don't have any world titles except the women's titles. Like, they don't have any men's world titles. They don't have any. They don't even. I mean, they have like
The
are the
tag
tag.
belts, right?
I mean, they do have the tag belts, but are they even considered a mid card title at this point?
They say worlds on them.
They say we're okay, so I guess they do have a world championship, but it's two guys who share them, and one of them's a bobblehead.
Yeah.
I'm never going to talk nice about JD McDonough. Sorry, guys. I know this is the positive podcast, but
I mean,
yeah,
honestly, I liked his work as Jordan Devlin in the on the UK brand. Like, yeah, he has a unique, weird look, but like honestly, I thought he could go in the
I
ring.
didn't say I wasn't going to. I was going to talk bad about Jordan Devlin because I won't, but I don't like JD McDonough.
okay,
Yeah, so you see what I
that's
mean
fair.
there? That's fair. Anyway, so another thing I liked that Jimmy is breaking ground on reconciling with Jay. I know we just put the Intercontinental Championship on Jay, but let's be honest here. If we want the World Tag Team Championships on either brand to mean anything, there need to be good people holding them and good people fighting for them. And it's something I feel like WWE is sorely lacking in recent times. And the Usos are, if not the best, one of the best tag teams on the planet. They are very
Oh,
good.
they're certainly in the conversation.
Oh yeah, yeah. They're on the Mount Rushmore, which means they're in the top four of tag teams as far as 2000 to now. If we went
Oh
all
yeah,
time, they might just squeak off of it. But I mean, they're twins, of course. So,
yeah,
but they're one of the most proficient and well-oiled tag teams that exist today, and I'm sure it would go right back to being that if they went back together.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, there's a reason that they kept going back to the well with them in the New Day
yeah,
for
yeah.
literal years.
As far as what I didn't like, um, I don't know what they're doing with Lash Legend and Jakara Jackson, but I feel like they should be making a bigger deal of them than just letting them get squashed. And the reason I say that is because one, they very obviously both have it, whatever that unquantifiable it is, they have it. But also, why are we squashing any women's tag teams at all? There are only like four of them. I mean, there's more now than there were a couple years ago when I started making that joke, but it's still literally only like
Just
seven,
barely.
like maybe seven,
Right?
and there's two brands with two. There's not distinct two distinct titles, but there is two brands, and they do split the women up between the brands, including the tag teams, and so I
I
mean,
mean, for that, I would argue it's three because don't they defend on NXT as well?
occasionally, yeah, they do defend on NXT, and I mean, but the craziest part about it to me is like they had a PLE just now, and Bianca and Jade were hosts, not competitors.
And
With
I
Naomi,
always
who was
thought it was
also a
kind of
host and
silly to
not a
have a
competitor.
host anyway.
I do.
Like unless they're going to be actively involved in the proceedings, if they're a host presents things.
Yeah,
To
they
have a
weren't really
host just
presenting
saying,
anything.
"Oh, welcome to the show," and then
Yeah.
have them faff off for the rest of the show, it doesn't mean anything.
Well, they did like a mid-show angle with it, not an angle, but like a mid-show check-in with them. But they were just in the VIP lounge where all like the super rich, famous people who were at the show were hanging out, and that was all they
Mm.
like. They were just name dropping, like, "Hey, look who's here! This person and this person." It wasn't really anything of substance. But that being said, there's only like seven tag teams or eight tag teams, and y'all are squashing one when you should be building up a division. I don't think a squash match should be happening in women's tag title
Yeah,
matches
if you need
right
a
now.
squash match, just get two local people.
Yeah,
Let's just do
especially if
it.
it's going to be a tag title match and not just a non-title match. Like
Yeah,
if the titles are going to be on the line, why did these people get why did they get an opportunity if they're just going to get beaten 2 minutes?
yeah,
And especially these two who are, I haven't seen them on TV ever. I don't know. I don't really know who these two ladies are.
me neither.
I'm sure they're a tag team that's come up from NXT, but I'm also sure that after watching them that they have it. They have the it thing that WWE looks for in like the WWE style of it, because
Yeah,
each company has their own it, what they would consider
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And so the
It's a
WWE it,
subjective. Yeah.
I haven't seen these ladies go a 30-minute Iron Man match, so I couldn't tell you if they belong where the best wrestle, but they sure as heck belong in WWE. So I just don't like when you got titles on the line, squash matches are dumb. I don't like that at all. Um, another thing I liked, I liked LA Knight and Carmelo Hayes. To be honest, it was easily the most technically proficient and entertaining match on the show. I mean, there was other matches that entertained me, but they had like storyline beats or something in there that made them entertaining. There's matches I didn't like or I didn't really like, but LA Knight and Carmelo Hayes, for as short as it was, because all matches on SmackDown seem to be short these days. Um, It was still really good. And the reversal into the BFT, it was kind of I can't remember exactly what move Carmelo was going for, but it was a reversal into a BFT that I hadn't seen before, which, like I said last time, if I haven't seen it before, I always pop for it, and that's super cool,
Yeah.
and I love that. So, really, I think my biggest question that I have coming out of the show is why was the Judgment Day there? Everything else is just kind of tracking with what's going on already. You know, LA Knight, Carmelo Hayes, Andrade have been in this weird like love triangle over the U.S. title. Even though it hasn't changed hands at all, it's always been LA Knight. But they've had this weird love triangle going on. Um, Honestly, I will take the three of them fighting over the U.S. title for the rest of eternity if I never see Logan Paul again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean,
That guy
people.
is.
I know there's going to be some real wrestling fans in our comments or in our Twitter or whatever being like, "But Logan Paul's a proficient wrestler." He is. I agree with you. I even agree that the heat that he carries with him makes him a good heel character. I will agree with that too. But there's one thing I won't talk about because of my personal moral issues with it. And then there's Logan Paul, who, after this segment, you may never hear me talk about again because he scammed a bunch of people, his own fans, out of millions of dollars, and he's unapologetic and he hasn't paid them back. And until he does, he can beat feet.
Yeah.
And
That's
that's
not
all I'll say.
even. That's not even bringing up like the stuff in Japan
Oh
and
yeah,
stuff
yeah,
like that. Like
that's not even bringing up everything. That's just
the
like
dude is legitimately a bad person. He and his
yeah,
brother are bad
are bad
people,
people.
and they are uh, very easily proven to be bad people.
Yeah.
So, and I know that wrestling is full of scumbags.
Mhm.
Like it's notable when somebody isn't a scumbag in
Yeah,
wrestling.
yeah,
But this was somebody who they hired for his audience, knowing full well of crappy things that he had done
hmm
prior to them hiring him.
hmm I'm pretty sure
I
the
will,
CoffeeZilla thing came out before he got signed.
yeah, I think it did too. I'm not positive. Don't quote me on that,
I
but
think it
I,
did.
I think it did. And I mean, I've seen clips of the guy. Like he is, yeah, he may be incredibly gifted. Like his brother is at boxing. His brother is from. I mean, I don't know a lot about boxing, but like he was still getting wins.
I
Like
don't think he's
they're
going to be a
both.
boxer much longer after next month when Mike Tyson starches him out. But
I mean, that depends on if he makes it to the match. Like he's already backed out once.
that's true.
So, that being said, like these guys do seem to be very athletically gifted. Both are absolutely tremendous performers with a knack for getting attention for themselves.
Yeah.
Um, so I understand to a degree why WWE would be interested in a performer like that. I don't believe it to be worth the baggage that he brings.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think there is a certain amount of bad will that comes with signing a Logan
Yeah,
Paul or somebody similar like that. Like
yeah.
it's kind of like Stephanie on the recent Vince documentary. I don't know if you've watched that Vince documentary yet.
I've only watched like the first. I haven't. I have two episodes left.
You've watched all the good parts then. But that there's a part in it where Stephanie's like, "Oh, we hired Mike Tyson before the rape thing happened,"
Yeah,
and
and then they corrected
they're
her. She's
like,
like,
"No, you
"Oh,
didn't." She's like,
really?
"Oh, really?
Oh,
Oh, really? Really?"
yeah,
This is where when our phantom producer, who we'll thank here in a minute, when he says we should put like sound bites and stuff in, that's where I put Cleveland Brown going, really?
yeah,
Like,
really?
really? But yeah, so it's a lot like that. Like you kind of y'all knew this guy was a scumbag and you hired him anyway, and not and not only that, but he hasn't used any of the goodwill that your company has or any of the PR that like he really should at least hook up with the WWE PR department and try to clean up his image in the way that WWE has done since separating from the reason they had a bad image in the first place.
Yeah.
Because they have built themselves up a lot of goodwill in the separation period.
Although if we're gonna go there, we also have to go and recognize that Hunter isn't good at that,
No, no,
like at
no. He
all.
shouldn't be talking about any
Why
of that
is
at
he
press
talking to
conference.
the press? He's terrible at talking to the press.
No, no. Hunter's a great
Awful.
promo, but he's terrible at talking to the press, man.
I
And he
would
shouldn't
argue
be.
that he's a passable promo as long as he keeps it at 5 minutes. And anything after that, it's just him. It's just a, a masturbatory exercise
I think pretty much
because
most of his promos, especially
because
during the the DX era, were masturbatory.
well, I mean obviously I mean that in a figurative way. This is the
Yeah.
guy that who famously in the last year says, "Oh, it's not about me," and then he comes out almost every PLE to
Well,
soak in the cheers of the crowd. Like, yeah, it's not about
hold
you.
on. Okay, okay, okay.
Whatever,
He can say
whatever.
he can say all day it's not about him, but we are absolutely 100% in the named either depending on how you want to call it. We're either in the Triple H or the Paul Levesque era of WWE. To the point where like, dude, did you know that like I never saw a producer's name on WWE credits ever, except for K Fame. That's the
Yeah,
only producer. It says
you
Paul
would
Levesque now.
you would never see that ever on Raw or SmackDown or any of their TV shows. Certain uh, cable providers, pay per view providers would mandate that
Mhm.
you credit all the tech people, including the producers, but you would always see at the very, 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 very end, and it'd be tiny, so nobody could reasonably be expected to read that. And remember, most of these two were back in the days before internet was a huge thing too. So you weren't getting screen caps of it and getting blown up and like, oh, who's that? Who's that? Who's that? No, and I remember because WCW had to do it too on
Mhm.
their pay-per-views. So like, it was there. It was mandated depending on their carrier. But
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. Like, I don't think they used real names
That was always
unless they had
kayfabe.
to, and they certainly didn't make it easy for you to spot who was who.
No,
So
no, never. But yeah, now it just says Paul Levesque, and everybody knows who Paul Levesque is. So,
yeah,
well, at
yeah,
least
he definitely
learned
wants
fans.
credit. Like, it's not
Yeah,
about who. Oh, it's not
yeah.
about me.
I mean,
It's not about me, guys.
I could
It's
say
about
like
the young talent. Yeah,
yeah,
whatever
this
knows.
is about
Get
the
over
young
it.
talent, but I'm booking it. So yeah, appreciate me. I mean, I'm kind of with him on that one. Like, if I was him, as long as he's been in the business and now he's at the top of the company, he's controlling the creative and it's doing well. Like, yeah, I'd kind of bask in a little bit too. I'm not gonna lie. I can't hate.
Nah, that's
I can't
that's
hate him for it. I can't.
see, that's
Because
you and I disagree on that. Like, we're gonna have to agree to disagree
we
on
can
that.
disagree on that. That's fine.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's something that we should, I know that this is getting tangential here, but I feel like we we should leave this in because
mhm,
this is, again, a positive podcast.
right.
We just had a conversation, totally unscripted, totally unplanned, where we agreed to disagree. We didn't get in each other's faces. We didn't call each other a bunch of names. We didn't insult our families or friends or whatever. We didn't, dox each other and send death threats in our DMs. We had a conversation with a difference of opinion, and it's fine.
Perfectly fine.
So, to wrestling fandom at large out there who likes to go and pick fights on the internet, and I
Oh
know
God.
it's not everybody who watches wrestling, it's a very loud minority of trolls, but I'm talking directly to you. You can chill, right? It's not that serious, right? We can all we all love the same thing. So why are you so angry? Why? It doesn't have to be this way, man. And
Not
I
at all.
know it's man. It's not woman.
No.
It's man.
Yeah.
Okay? It's okay. People love you. We love you. Now stop being jerks.
Right. But yeah, well, but you know what? We agreed to disagree, and that's as strong as something can get, especially between two friends. And that leads us to a hot tag.
All right, so the hot tag, Wrestledream. Instead of Collision this week, we had an AEW pay per view, which always deliver. I can't think of one that didn't. So let's just speed through these right here. Match number one, they opened up with Jay White versus Adam Page. Uh, Great hot opener because Tacoma hated Hangman. There was a lot of heat on this. Surprisingly, I thought like neither one of them
Ooh.
I feel could really afford a loss at this point. White was coming back from an injury, and Page is, I mean, he needs momentum on this character for it to be kind of justified. But you had to pick a winner, and they went with Jay White. Uh, Jay White wins with Blade Runner after Hangman couldn't do the buckshot lariat after getting his knee worked over for about half the match. Afterwards, Hangman said, "Oh, this isn't over" from the ring and everything. So, yeah, that probably isn't over. Match number two,
No way.
world women's world title match. Mariah May defending against Will Nightingale. 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 I don't know why I said that. Please edit that out.
Okay.
Mariah May wins a good back and forth. Honestly, I think this is probably Mariah May's best title defense so far. Honestly, like
Yeah.
kind of by a stretch. Um, the magic of Willow. But she wins clean with Storm Zero after hitting a reversal top rope Hurricane Rana and then a running knee. Hits the Storm Zero right after that, and it's over. Match number three was for the TNT title. Jack Perry defended against Katsuyori Shibata. Story of this match was Shibata wasn't selling anything.
Not
These
a
Japanese
thing.
guys, I think it's just the thing with Jack Perry. None of the Japanese guys are selling any of his stuff. I think that's just the gimmick they're going with here. I think it's meant to make Perry look, I don't know, really, but
I don't know,
uh,
man. I can say if I was Katsuyori Shibata and I came into a pay per view where I was going for a title and you told me that I was going to go and get beaten by Jack Perry, I probably might not sell anything either. Um,
well,
but
I
moving
mean,
on.
that's neither here or there. Shibata gets pinned when he applies the rear naked choke, but Jack Perry arches backwards and rolls him up. So he's in the sleeper, but he gets the 3 count anyway. That protects Shibata, that protects Perry because it makes him look like a conniving little, he was lucky more than good, which is good for a
Mhm.
heel. I thought it worked, and it was really entertaining seeing Shibata no sell everything.
Yeah,
um,
just wiping his chest after every kick.
yeah,
Ugh,
like
just
those chops
oh,
were hard too, man.
dude, yeah.
Those strikes were hard. Um, Afterwards, Perry attacks Shibata with the title belts, and then of all people, not of all people, it was foreshadowed. Uh, Daniel Garcia makes the save, runs him off a little bit, but then all of a sudden we get our only not well one of two non-wrestling segments when all of a sudden MJF's music hits. I don't think anybody expected him to be there because we know that he's filming uh a movie with Adam
Yeah,
Sandler.
he's doing Happy Gilmore 2, and they just put out a report like a couple days before the pay-per-view, like a Hollywood reporter site, not even a wrestling site,
Yeah,
was saying that they were still like 2 or 3 weeks from being done filming that movie. So nobody
yeah,
expected MJF back for another month.
yeah. Although I mean, I guess it's just up the coast, right?
Yeah, I
you
guess
can make
so.
you can make that trip pretty easily by plane. From LA to Tacoma and back. You can make that
Yeah.
before filming starts the next day or whatever, probably.
Yeah,
But
probably.
MJF gets in there. He gets the one up on Garcia and grabs a mic. Uh, he takes advantage of Perry actually attacking with the TNT title belt. Once Garcia turned his back, and then MJF is picking up the scraps here. He runs down Garcia and Seattle. He thanked. This was great. He thanked Garcia for telling him that he stole his diamond ring and pawned it off in Buffalo specifically because he was able to track it down from there. So even though I hate the diamond ring, it's so played out. I am entertained by how they got it back.
Yeah.
But yeah, he goes to nail him with it, and then Adam Cole, baby,
I popped.
comes back, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, I didn't think he was coming back like ever. I thought he was permanently injured because he's been out for a year. Like, I love Adam Cole, but he is very, very fragile.
Yeah.
And he came and ran off him. I saw a lot of people ragging on this on Twitter, bad faith takes about, oh, Adam Cole's a babyface now. It's like, well, all he has to do is say, you know why I did all that bad stuff to you? This, the way you're acting right now, because this is who you really are. This is what you deserve. That's all you have to say. And that's probably something akin to what he will say on Dynamite. So, like, it's fine. It's fine, guys. It's fine.
I mean, it really, like, the only question I have is what now, if Adam Cole is a face, what now with Roddy and Undisputed Kingdom, who are tweeners? Still heels?
I think it's unclear after they shook Hook's hand.
Yeah, see, that's
unclear.
Unclear.
They haven't really followed up on it, except that they still want the Beast Mortos as their retainer, or on retainer as their lawyer.
But he's definitely in a heel faction, so
he is. But he's still kind of conflicted about it. He still is like,
that's okay. Yeah. He's like, oh, I don't. Yeah, sad monster noises.
Sad monster noises. But we'll get to him in a bit.
Yeah.
Match number 4 was this match, the International Championship match. Basically, they used this to cap off Act 1 of the show, and this was Will Ospreay defending against Ricochet and Konosuke Takeshita, and it was amazing. It's going to be talked about later, but I do need to mention and stress that this is must watch. It's absolutely must watch. The end came when all 3 guys were down, and Callis comes in with the screwdriver. He pulled the referee out, I think, and he gets the screwdriver, and he's about to actually use it himself on Ospreay, but Ospreay catches him, and he's like, "Oh no!" He does the banging off, and then Kyle Fletcher comes out of nowhere, and he uses the screwdriver. Finally, he betrays Will Ospreay, allowing Takeshita to hit the power drive knee and win the international title. They finally strapped up Takeshita. Finally, because it was getting to the point where if you didn't do it soon, people were going to lose faith on him. And this match not only delivered on the wrestling front, but also on the storyline progression front and the push for Takeshita. Afterwards, Fletcher definitely made it clear that he was screwing with Ospreay and that he was no longer friends with him by giving him the Tiger Driver 91. So yeah, he tucked his head, he tucked his neck. It looked about as safe as that move can be. So I'm fairly certain that Will Ospreay is fine. But yeah, it was gnarly. Yeah. Segment number 2. So this is like your intermission between the 2 acts of the show. Renee interviews. Oh, there were 3. I forgot. Renee interviews Orange Cassidy and Jerry Lynn, of all people, backstage. This was weird and out of nowhere, but I love it. Love Jerry Lynn. You and I saw him win the Ring of Honor World title in Houston ages ago. Always going to have a soft spot for him. Mm-hmm. Jerry Lynn talks up OC and says that, he's gotten to know him and he's gotten to see his growth and everything. He's unique. He's never seen anybody like him. And he could be the man in this company if he tried. And then, encourages him to try, which always kind of a hard sell for OC, but and then all of a sudden from the other side of the shop, Hook comes in. He's like, "Yeah, dude, you are the man," and then he leaves. It's very very strange. It was like it was almost like, yeah, hurry up, guys, we got to get to Swerve. We got to get to
Right.
Swerve. So speaking of which, Prince Nana is in the ring for the next segment. He introduces Swerve. He gets a hero's welcome, the whole bit. Tacoma adores him. Swerve's not entirely 100% physically, but he's at least medically cleared. MVP interrupts Swerve and says they have history. He believes from the start. They mentioned a match in Defy that they had where Swerve went over him. He's like, you're the man. We can do great things together. Then Swerve returns the favor, talks up MVP and Shelton Benjamin, and especially Shelton saying that he was a big influence on him. He was, they were both, prime examples of excellence in black wrestling. Reiterates MVP points about Nana though, but credits him too, because even though all this bad stuff happened on his watch, all this good stuff happened on his watch anyway. So it's a wash, and that Nana is family, and that he doesn't turn his back on family. Quick interjection: if family means so much to him, how could he do what he did to Adam Page? Hanger did nothing wrong. I'm gonna press that till the day I die. Shelton then gets on the microphone and is like, "There is no you without us. We're not asking you to join us. We're telling you that you have to." And so they get kind of in a pull apart brawl, and it was fun. And that's gonna be down the line what looks like Swerve's trajectory is. It's him, and they haven't named it yet, but we assume it's going to be the Hurt Syndicate.
Yeah.
Match number 5, 2 out of 3 falls. Your ongoing Hispanic / Latinx History Month match, a match to coincide with their new deal with Fox Sports Mexico. So 2 out of 3 falls is very, very, very common, almost to the point of being a rule in lucha culture. They introduced they didn't introduce, but they highlight the announce table. The Spanish announce there's Carlos Cabrera.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, Carlos Cabrera. Like,
I was like, oh, like you saw him on the Spanish announce team on WWF pay-per-views going back to the mid-90s. It's always a treasure. It's always a treat to see Carlos. Big ups to Carlos Cabrera. It's, again, 2 out of 3 falls match. Hologram wins the first fall with a cradle. That weird, like Monty Strahl kind of adjusted cradle after a running crucifix bomb, following a top rope reversal into a head scissors. Like, the stuff in this match was nuts.
Yeah.
Mortos wins the second fall, becoming the first person in AEW to pin Hologram. He does it with he hit him with 2 backbreaker variants, one from an inverted torture rack position, and then the power bomb onto the knee that MJF also does, and then hits him with the discus lariat for that second pinfall. Hologram wins the third one, which the spinning Blue Thunder Bomb, which they're now calling the Portal Bomb.
The Portal Bomb, okay.
Portal Bomb, yeah.
Portal Bomb.
Great match, fantastic. Another one, go watch. Like, the crowd was up for this. Match number 6, Darby Allin versus Brody King. Special entrance video for Darby. He was skating all over Tacoma, and he pulled the Marty McFly with the thing.
With the bus, yeah.
Apparently, he couldn't just like drive. He had to be on the other side of the city and until the show started, or what, I don't know. But he showed up. He got a special entrance. The match was nuts. Darby wins though. He finally gets his pinfall victory over Brody. When he pushes him, the steel steps had been set up on the outside on their side. So earlier in the match, and they'd done some stuff with it out there, but they'd stayed there. And Darby pushes Brody from the top rope onto the steps. Somehow they didn't move. A guy that
No,
big falling
they
from that
didn't
high,
move.
like I don't know how they met. They must have practiced that over and over again to make sure that
I
which
think they might
just
have been
proves
more
that Brody King is
reinforced than
tougher than
normal.
anybody. But oof.
Oh my
um,
God. Ugh.
and then he coffin drops him while he's on the steps, and then he makes it into the ring. And then when Brody King finally makes it to the ring at 9, he gets immediately dropped with another coffin drop from the waiting Darby Allin for the 1-2-3. This match was excellent as well. Much more storyline focused, much more story driven.
Yeah.
Match number 7, World Tag Team title match. Young Bucks put the belts on the line against Private Party. We get an amazing Red sighting.
Yeah. Amazing Red. I was like,
I didn't know
what?
that he had met trained to Top Flight,
I didn't know that at all.
or not Top Flight.
Or Private Party.
Private Party. Thank you. I didn't know that, but it's always good to see him. He's one of those guys. Excalibur brought it up on commentary. Like, he's one of those guys who, he never had like the big success on the big stage, but he's been so tremendously influential in pro wrestling since the early 2000s. He's one of those. His DNA is all over your favorite wrestler's styles, guaranteed.
Oh yeah.
This was a nice long match with lots of back and forth, lots of call outs and stuff like that. Lots of counters. Lots of really good near falls too. They got me on a couple. I thought the match was over a couple of times before it actually was, but the ending came when they eventually hit the TK driver. But Private Party gets a standing ovation from the crowd afterwards because their music played anyway. This raised their stock tremendously, I think. I honestly do. I think they're going to finally be players in the tag division like they should have been since the inception. Match number 8, Chris Jericho versus Mark Briscoe over the ROH World Title. The end comes when Jericho hits the Judas effect, but gets greedy and wants to go for the J Driller. He does, but Mark Briscoe marks out. He kicks out, and he hulks up, like he legitimately like hulks up, and wins with the Froggy Bow and then the J Driller, and then that's it. And then Bryan Danielson versus Jon Moxley for the world title. This match started out so well. Like, I'll go into it later, but the opening minutes of this match were incredible. At one point, Marina Shafir gets caught interfering for like the 3rd time and gets sent to the back. But it doesn't really matter in the end because the end comes when Jon Moxley chokes out Bryan Danielson with a rear naked choke in kind of a lackluster and anticlimactic way. I mean, it's kind of difficult with a rear naked choke for it to be anything but anticlimactic unless you really sell it. This was the culmination of a bunch of counters that you almost kind of felt was going to continue, and then it didn't. He passed out. He didn't tap out. After that, we'll talk about the aftermath of this after we run down what I liked elsewhere and what I didn't like. There was lots of great wrestling on this show. Obviously, it's an AEW pay-per-view. They're a wrestling-centric organization. Their pay-per-views, their super cards, always deliver on the wrestling front. I can't remember a single pay-per-view that they've done where the wrestling has been a problem at all. That being said, I think this is probably Mariah May's best outing as champion, and maybe, as champion, because I think her match with Toni Storm was still a little bit better, but as champion, as defending champion, this was the kind of defense that she needed.
Oh yeah.
There were times where it looked like Willow actually could have won. The crowd was very into the idea of her winning. Like it's you look at where the story is going, and we already talked about this. You realize that until she faces Toni Storm again, whether she beats her or not, she's not losing that belt
No.
because it's not about anybody else. It's about Toni.
Yeah.
It's about Toni and Mariah. So, like, I mean, I maybe I could see them doing like a quick change and then quick win it back, but that's not really AEW's modus operandi. So I don't really feel like that's in the cards.
Hmm.
But yeah, there was some great stuff. Willow hit him. Well, it was an empty pool, but she did a moonsault. I don't think I've ever seen Willow try the moonsault before, and it was gorgeous, even if she
Yeah.
landed on the mat.
On nothing.
Um,
Yeah.
there was a great Indian deathlock that
Yeah.
she put on, showing her technical side
Oh, when she grabbed her head and started bashing it into her own
with her
knee.
own, yeah, her
Oh my
own, yeah.
God.
I thought that was fantastic. Just great stuff. Willow loses, but doesn't really lose anything. Like
No, not at all.
she's like within a year, that division should be built around her. It really should. And this is coming from somebody who is a diehard Toni Storm fan, but that's going to run its course eventually. And the
Yeah.
one to pick up the ball or the baton or whatever you want to pass to her, the torch, it needs to be Willow. It needs to be Willow.
Yeah. Yeah, it needs to
Um,
be Willow for sure. It
yeah.
was a great
Another thing,
match.
yeah. The other thing, like I said, there was lots of wrestling there. That I love the 2 out of 3 falls match, though. I mean, we're big Beast Mortos fans here
Oh
on the
yeah.
podcast. Clearly, if that hasn't been made clear already,
Right.
um, but it was a really good showcase for him in both of their first pay-per-view outing.
Hmm.
Um, I do kind of wonder where LFI was during all of this, but it didn't hurt the match, and it was good to see now that even though it didn't cost them the match, now that Hologram has been pinned, it takes the pressure off. Because
Yeah.
anytime there's a winning streak, it's like, okay, you build it and you build it, you build it. Okay, eventually we're going to have to beat this guy because nobody should stay undefeated forever. And you limit your options that way, storytelling wise.
Yeah.
Now it's not only does it serve to alleviate the pressure from Hologram, it also puts over Mortos even in defeat because he can still say he was the first to pin the guy. And for a guy that doesn't have a lot of wins, that means a lot more.
Yeah.
So, I thought that was great. Fantastic. Some of the stuff they did in this match was absolutely ludicrous. Go out of your way to watch it. Obviously, the international title, or we'll talk about that in a second. Um, One thing I do wish that they did, why was there only one women's match on this card? There were
Oh,
9 matches. Why couldn't they have had another women's match? It didn't even need, honestly, if it was me booking, I would have scrapped the Ring of Honor title match. Not scrapped it, but postponed it. Put that on whatever the next Ring of Honor pay-per-view is. Put that on that card where it belongs.
mhm,
Actually have the champion show up on ROH. Have Jericho show up on ROH and build that there. You can build it across both of them. I don't care, but build that there too. You put
mhm.
Jericho on the card, and maybe you get a few extra buys, and it's on a card that it should be on, as opposed to this. And I would have replaced that with Chris Statlander versus Camille because I want to see that match. And if they're gonna go with this weird out of nowhere Statlander babyface turn, and they're obviously angling for a TBS shot against Mercedes Monet, have her face the heavy first. Give Camille a pay-per-view opportunity. Have a women's match on the card that doesn't revolve around the title for once.
Mhm.
You know, there, you highlight Camille's strengths, you highlight Stat's strength. Camille can even go over due to Monet interfering. I don't care. Like Stat doesn't really lose anything from losing by nefarious means, and
Yeah.
Camille only gains. I feel like that would have been a better. It's weird to say that over a Ring of Honor World Title match, but I really feel like that would have been a better spot. Would have been a better choice
Yeah.
for that number 8 match.
Um,
Honestly,
yeah, I found it weird that we had, they have the highest paid women's wrestler on the planet in their roster, and she was not on their pay-per-view. It was weird to
apparently
me.
she was on the pre-show doing non-wrestling things and setting something up with
Yeah,
Queen Aminata, but like,
yeah. There's
why?
going to be a Quima. Yeah, they're having a match on Dynamite, but like,
Which
and
is,
there
well, I'll
was
take that, but
two other women's matches on the pre-show.
yeah,
Um,
Anna
and
Jay and someone.
yeah, Anna
I
Jay and
don't know. I
someone,
didn't watch the pre-show,
and
so I
Anna
didn't.
Jay and someone, and Statlander and someone. And Statlander actually finished her match with a backpack finisher,
Okay.
which was pulled off amazingly by her.
What
Or
we
no,
talked about the other week. Yeah.
maybe it was Anna Jay that did. I'm trying to remember because
Oh,
like
well, Anna Jay's using a gory bomb. I know that.
the
I mean,
backpack and
that's
then
a
onto the
backpack move.
backpack into
Yeah.
the pancake. Okay, yes, it was Anna
Yeah.
Jay then, but it looked
Yeah.
great. Her doing it.
Yeah. Because she's tall.
She's taller, yeah. But
Yeah.
it also
Taller
she
and
just went
stronger.
like instead of trying to roll her off, she just goes straight back and
Yeah.
pancakes, and it's fucking ugly in the best way.
Yeah.
Like
It looks like it hurts.
it looks like it hurts. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just it's weird that they used her presence at the pay set up a match for Dynamite instead of
Yeah.
having her on a
Like I
match.
said, I think he would have been better served by having Statlander advance that by having her face Camille.
Yeah.
And she doesn't have to go over. Camille could go over,
Yeah, and that
by
has just as much
nefarious
time
means.
in.
It's fine.
That has just as much time in and build as anything else on this card really did, except
Yeah.
for Moxley Danielson. So
So, but
yeah,
yeah, moving on, the international title match.
Jesus Christ.
I First of all, I want to say that all 3 men deserve a rousing standing ovation. Secondly, I want to single out Ricochet specifically because uh, as soon as he got to AEW, it was very clear that he wanted to be different and be seen in a different light than he was in WWE, where he was always the light guy. His stuff looked impressive, but it didn't look hard hitting. I know I mentioned this last week, but I think it bears repeating that Ricochet is really wrestling seemingly with a purpose to be taken more seriously as somebody who could beat you up.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, yeah, he's 5'10" or whatever, but look at him. Look at him. That dude is shredded. I believe he could beat me up. Absolutely. No question about it.
Oh yeah.
100%. And especially with this new style that he's adopted, yeah, like it's believable. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's mixing all his flippy stuff with power moves and strikes that look like they're taking dudes' heads off. Like
Oh
he's really laying it in. So I really want to shout out to Ricochet specifically. A lot of guys when they switch companies, they don't take the time to alter their style. They just kind of do what they've always done with maybe like 1 or 2 tweaks, maybe a new finish or something like that. Ricochet has transformed his entire presentation to someone who looks like, yeah, you weren't really the third man out. There were absolutely times in this match where I thought anybody could have walked away with the belt. Like I kind of figured it might be Takeshita, but like there were times when Ricochet, it was like, man, they could have gone with him. They could have
man,
gone with him, and I wouldn't have been mad about it at all. I wouldn't have been mad. I'm glad they strapped up Takeshita, but I wouldn't have been mad if they put the belt on Ricochet.
dude, Ricochet pins people so good. He's got people kicking out who he didn't even pin.
I want to finish this segment or this match's review by paying it the highest compliment that I feel I can give it.
Mm-hmm.
There's kind of an upper echelon of legendary, whatever you want to call them, three-way, triple threat matches, whatever you want to call them. And this is right up there with them. It may be better than any of them. The three that I'm thinking of specifically are John Cena, Seth Rollins, and Brock Lesnar.
Mm-hmm.
There's the WrestleMania 20 main event with Shawn Michaels and Triple H and the other guy. There's where I'd rather not name them.
No.
And then there's the a match they actually called out, the triple threat match over, what was it, Unbreakable,
Mm-hmm.
at TNA Unbreakable in 2005, I think it was, with Samoa Joe, Christopher Daniels, and AJ Styles. They actually called out that match um, with a spot where they were taking turns kicking Takeshita, and then he gets up frustrated, stands around, and it says, "Stop kicking me," just like Christopher Daniels, and then they kick him in the face. Like
It was so good.
it's right up there. Those are like the best, I think, consensus triple threat matches of all time. This is right up there with them, and it may be the best that I've ever
Yeah.
seen. That
It
may be
was very
recency
good.
bias, but it might be the best. So now we have to talk about the main event
Mm-hmm.
and its aftermath, because after he choked out choked out Danielson, the whole arena, the air just went out of it. And then
Yeah.
the Blackpool Combat Club comes out, um, and Moxley gets a bag, and Yuta comes out and he stops it. Yuta comes out with Darby and chases him off. Darby, I think, what did he have? He had a weapon. I can't remember what it was, but he chased him out. But then Yuta turns on Darby, nails him, and then he's the one to put the bag over Brian's head. And it was just, it made me feel lots of bad things.
Yeah.
And I've had, as of this recording, pretty much exactly 24 hours to think about it and to go over it and to see some chatter online, how other people feel about it. And I guess the consensus that I came to in my own mind after having given it all that thought is that it made me feel the intended feeling, the intended emotions. It set up a lot of stuff for a new generation to avenge Danielson. And this is only the end of Danielson's career as a full-time wrestler. So it's not like he's not going to come back and get his revenge at some point. The surgery needed to happen. It was very clear that he was
Mm-hmm.
very, very hurt. From the beginning of this match, the beginning of this match had a flurry of offense that was crazy, but you could tell that he was hurting because he took a clothesline on the outside from Moxley, and the bump that he took, he did not take it like you would take a normal clothesline. He made sure to land on his butt.
Mm-hmm.
So like you could tell that he was really hurting. So it was necessary. I guess my biggest complaint at this point, like I can't complain about the stuff they set up. I feel bad about Washington having to see their boy go through that.
Yeah.
But you can't always have happy endings in wrestling, or else the good times don't mean anything. So from a storyline standpoint, as much as I hated it in the moment, and I did hate it in the moment, I felt so bad. Um, I'm okay with it. What
Mm-hmm.
I do wish they did, what I do wish could have been different, but realistically, you couldn't have really done it with anyone else. Ultimately, I kind of wish that it had been some, like literally anybody other than Moxley. Moxley doesn't need another freaking title run. Like,
No.
and honestly, like, even though he just kind of reappeared after a couple months absence after that tour, oh, awful match with Naito, but that's more on Naito than Moxley. Naito's just running on vibes at this point.
Yeah.
Um, but like, I feel like I'm just tired of Moxley strutting around like the toughest guy in the room, and you
Hmm.
just like no selling everybody. Like, and it's not the same with Jack Perry and Shibata. It's literally everybody. Like, he can't be seen as anything but the toughest guy. Like, he's strutting around like he's Brock Lesnar, and it's just
Yeah.
like the guys that he could make, like, some of this is on Tony for not following up on booking, but like, I felt like his series of matches with Orange Cassidy should have elevated Cassidy more than they did,
Yeah.
and that's more on the booking. But like, look at how hard Cassidy had to fade to even look like he was in Moxley's league. That's a little insulting, really.
Yeah. It is. It is a little.
Like,
Yeah.
you read Moxley's book, and he's a very interesting guy, but he kind of comes off as an arrogant prick who's kind of up his own butt. Like, it's, I respect the guy, but I really feel like if they're going to change his character, like, he needs to be more giving. I think maybe he, was so soured by WWE that he was like, I'm never going to sell again. Like,
Maybe.
and it's just like, that works a as a a baby face or an anti-hero for a while, and then it doesn't anymore. And it certainly doesn't work as a heel. Like, it's, at least not for me. Your mileage may vary, but I would have preferred a longer vacation for Moxley, and for him to come back and do something different where he sells more. Like, if he's a heel, he should be selling way more than he does. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I know he's a monster heel or whatever, but like, it's I just wish that Brian had been able to be given the opportunity to put somebody else over in this position other than Moxley. And I guess
Yeah.
that's my biggest gripe that remains after this. Everything else I've come to terms with. And it doesn't really make sense to do this with anybody but Mox, so I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
I just wish it could have been different, and it could have been somebody else who could have used the rub to elevate themselves instead of somebody who was already a made guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. I wish they would have used somebody else for that. Not a big Moxley guy, but I thought other than that, pay per view was freaking fantastic. So
100%.
can't really be mad. All right, so now it's time for our call in the ring segment for this week. Adam, explain how this goes.
So, as you know, if you've been listening to us the last few weeks, the Call in the Ring segment is something different every week. So this week, I was tasked to come up with something to talk about, and I decided to go a little on the creative route. Um, I take a look at successful storylines recently, like Tony Storm and Mariah May, all about Mariah, or from a couple of years ago, where John Moxley and CM Punk, apparently much to CM Punk's ignorance, took a lot of elements from Rocky 3 and worked that into their storyline. Um, and so I was like, okay, well, what else can translate? So I tasked the both of us to come up with one piece of art. Now, that could range from a movie, a TV show, a play, a song, an actual piece of art, uh, a book, anything. Something from, and it could be as obscure or as mainstream as we wanted, but to come up with one piece of art, and from there extrapolate a wrestling storyline from that, drawing inspiration from that piece of art. As somebody who, uh, as people who were in e-feds, this was kind of our bread and butter at one point. I figured it was something that we could go back to, drawing on inspiration from pop culture. So, Aaron, do you want to go first?
No, you go first this week. I went first last week.
Sure. Okay.
All right.
Okay. So, uh, mine is probably a little bit more obscure. Like, it's a little niche. The thing with me is that, as you and I were talking about this actually earlier, off of the recording, about how my background is, from an ethnic standpoint, is around half Irish. I've got Irish on both my mom and dad's sides, and it's definitely in my genes because every time March rolls around, I can't help but listen to anything but Irish music for like the whole month. Even past St. Patrick's Day, it's like nope, March is Irish month. So I listen to a lot of like Dubliners and Irish Rovers and stuff like that in the month of March. And I actually got my first exposure to that while I was doing the Disney College program. There is a bar that to this day is still there in the what used to be known as the downtown Disney Marketplace. I can't remember what they call it now, Disney Square or something like that. But
Yeah.
it's called Raglan Road, and the actual physical bar there was imported from Ireland. It is over 100 years old. Like
Wow.
and it goes like halfway through the whole bar, and they serve Irish themed food, and they have live music from Irish bands like every day of the week. And every 20-30 minutes or so, there'll be a girl who stands up on a little platform and does a little hard shoe step dance number, which is great. And I remember walking in there that first time, and I immediately felt like I was home. Like it was just in my genes. I've never been to Ireland. It's on my bucket list, but I immediately felt comfortable there. I immediately felt like this was where I belonged. So I'm very connected to that side of me in maybe kind of a superficial way because I've never been to the motherland, so to speak. I don't know like a lick of Irish beyond sláinte, but like, uh, but I'm very in touch with that to a certain degree. And so I chose to take one of my favorite Irish songs. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but there's several versions of the song, but the Black Velvet Band. If you don't know it, I could sing it for you. I don't think you'd want to hear that. But basically, it's the story of a guy who's apprenticed in versions vary, but the one I'm using is takes place in Belfast, and guy is just walking around town and he sees this pretty girl that he likes that's wearing her hair up with the black velvet bands, and she basically pickpockets a guy's watch and places it on him for no discernible reason really other than to troll him. And then because he's been framed for this theft, he gets sent to Van Diemen's Land, which is an old-timey name for what we now know as Tasmania, a little island on the south coast of Australia, which was a penal colony.
Okay.
So you can look up the lyrics for yourself. I'm not going to torture you with my awful singing, but I took that and I crafted a storyline around it. So the rules for this were we could have it set in any promotion using any set of talent that we wanted. So I've decided to take the opportunity to use as many Irish wrestlers as I can think of. that makes sense. So this story will start on April 21st, 2025, the Raw after WrestleMania 41. As is traditional in the immediate aftermath of WrestleMania, we have surprise call-ups and debuts in the main roster. We see the call-up of Chase University from NXT as Andre Chase and Duke Hudson beat the Creed brothers in a competitive match that sees them roll up Julius for the win after the referee's distracted when Chad Gable gets into an argument and nearly strikes Thea Hale at ringside. Women's tag team champions, the Unholy Union, who regained their belts, their tag belts in a triple threat match at night 2 of WrestleMania, pitting Zoe Stark to unseat Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair, immediately dropped the belts to the returning Iconics.
Okay.
This will make sense. This
All right.
will make sense. That following Friday, you see the debut of the newly signed David Finlay from New Japan, Fit Finlay's kid. He actually has his younger son is actually in NXT, but he's a little green, so I decided to go with David here.
Okay.
He debuts as a babyface in Irish-themed gear, quickly dispatches of Austin Theory with an STO backbreaker that he uses. He's now renamed that the Irish Sweepstakes.
Okay.
The next Monday on Raw, Paul Levesque makes the announcement that the following week, the WWE Draft will return, and Raw will get 3 draft picks for every 2 that SmackDown gets, reflecting the roster size and show run times, normal stuff. Following Friday on SmackDown, David Finlay defeats Giovanni Vinci in another quick match with the same finish. Cuts a promo after the match. For those of you who don't know, I'm the son of Fit Finlay. Just like my dad, I love to fight. But more importantly, I'm here to carry on the legacy of my father. And he holds up the shillelagh that he brings with him to the ring, implying that it was his dad's. And to join the list of other great superstars of Irish origin. I may have been raised in America, but my heart and soul are from the Emerald Isle, and that means whichever brand ultimately gives me a shot and drafts me won't be disappointed. Noticeable is his lack of Irish accent. That will be played later. Oh, also, I'm working under the assumption, and this is taking a huge leap of fiction, but I'm working under the assumption that the Irish unification of 2024 actually does happen. It won't, but it should, because it's a Star Trek reference and it'd be really, really funny. And it's long overdue anyway. So for the sake of this, please assume that Northern Ireland and Ireland are now one country again.
Okay.
That's the only way any of this really makes sense. So Monday, Raw. In the course of draft proceedings, Raw drafts Indy Hartwell, Grayson Waller, and United States champion LA Knight, among others. Friday, in the course of draft proceedings, SmackDown drafts Lyra Valkyria, brand new Intercontinental champion Sheamus, and former World Tag Team champions Finn Balor and JD McDonough, leaving the rest of the Judgment Day behind and effectively breaking up the group.
Yay!
David Finlay defeats the debuting JD McDonough in a back-and-forth match. McDonough tries to cheat while Balor distracts the referee, but Finlay catches McDonough's foot on a low blow attempt and throws him into Balor on the apron, catching him with a schoolboy on a rebound off the ropes for a 1-2-3. Balor hits the ring to try to avenge his tag team partner, but Finlay powders, winking at Balor as he walks up the ramp. Elsewhere, Lyra Valkyria defeats B-Fab in her debut on the Blue brand fairly handily with a frog splash. And Sheamus cuts a promo, saying it's good to be in a new environment where there are new bangers to have and new arses to kick. Following SmackDown, JD McDonough demands Nick Aldis give him a rematch against Finlay, which he's granted on the condition that Finn Balor is banned from ringside. Balor appears on the stage to cause a distraction during Finlay's match with McDonough, which is not technically at ringside, which almost cost Finlay the match to a close schoolboy roll-up, but gets up and counters the devil inside into a reverse waist-lock roll-up for the victory. This time, Balor makes it to the ring in time and helps McDonough beat down Finlay for his audacity, the final shot coming from Balor wielding Finlay's only shillelagh. Balor grabs the mic and challenges Finlay to a match the next night at Backlash, which Aldis later makes official and leaves with Finlay's shillelagh. I'm assuming all these pay-per-views are going to be on Saturdays. I don't know that. They haven't released their schedule, but other than SummerSlam, they've released SummerSlam for 2025. That was Saturday, May 17th, Backlash. David Finlay beats Finn Balor in around 15 minutes. Balor looks to have things in hand towards the end when McDonough, still sour about his 2 losses and looking to get at least one shot in personally, grabs Finlay's shillelagh and insists on trying to bash Finlay's head in with it. Balor looks annoyed but gives in and ties Finlay up in the ropes to hold him and initiates an argument with the referee. McDonough winds up, but Finley gets out in time, kicking McDonough in the stomach and bashing him with the shillelagh instead when McDonough drops it. He turns around into a small package from Balor, but escapes, hits a series of European uppercuts, a fireman's carry drop onto the ropes, a German suplex into the turnbuckles, and an Irish sweepstakes to pick up the win. He grabs his shillelagh and celebrates on the ramp as Balor seeds in the ring. Following Monday on Raw, Adam Pearce announces the King and Queen of the Ring tournaments will once again be held in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia in 3 weeks' time. I know you don't like to talk about Saudi Arabia, but it plays into it. Sorry, I'm going to roll with it. The show will feature both the semifinals and finals of each tournament, and the winners get shots at their respective brand's top titles at SummerSlam, as was the case the year before. Each brand will host one side of the bracket so that the finals will guarantee a Raw versus SmackDown finals. To that end, this week will feature qualifying matches for the tournament, and the next week will feature quarterfinal matchups. Qualifying for the tournaments for the Raw side are Braun Breaker, Chad Gable, Pete Dunne, Sami Zayn, The Miz, Damian Priest, Dominic Mysterio, and United States Champion LA Knight for King, and Dakota Kai, Michin, Raquel Rodriguez, Shayna Baszler, Zelina Vega, Io Sky, and Liv Morgan for Queen. SmackDown that week, David Finlay qualifies for the King of the Ring tournament by beating Tonga Loa. The other qualifiers are Jacob Fatu, Johnny Gargano, Kevin Owens, Andrade, Braun Strowman, Logan Paul, and Randy Orton. Yeah, I'm making Logan Paul show up for work. Queen of the Ring tournament qualifiers feature Bayley, Candice LeRae, Chelsea Green, Jade Cargill, Bianca Belair, Natalya, Tegan Nox, and Lyra Valkyria. Raw, Braun Breaker, Sami Zayn, Damian Priest, and LA Knight all advance, as do Michin, Baszler, Sky, and Morgan. SmackDown, Finlay beats Paul to advance. I did that for you. I wanted him to beat Paul specifically. Joining Andrade, Orton, and Fatu in the quarterfinals. Valkyria beats LeRae to advance, joining Green, Cargill, and Belair. Raw, Sami Zayn and LA Knight advance to the semifinals on the male side, and Baszler and Sky do so on the female side. And SmackDown, Finlay and Orton advance to the semifinals on the male side, and Valkyria and Cargill do on the female side. King and Queen of the Ring. Finlay goes 20 minutes with Orton after a competitive match, but ultimately loses. Orton shakes his hand afterwards and puts the match over even more by ultimately losing in the finals to Sami Zayn. Lyra Valkyria beats Cargill by the skin of her teeth, but loses handily to Baszler in the finals, choked out in under 5 minutes to mark her second straight Queen of the Ring finals appearance, but also her second straight loss. SmackDown. Randy Orton opens the show in the ring with a mic in his hand. You know, I've done pretty much all there is to do in WWE, he explains. I've won Royal Rumbles, I'm a Grand Slam champion, but the one thing I've never been able to accomplish that I'd like to before I eventually retire is become King of the Ring. And I was close. This close, he says. But I couldn't get the job done against Sami Zayn when it counted. But you know what? I'm not even mad. In my younger years, I would have been incensed, but I'm not even mad because I know the reason that I couldn't achieve my goal was because of the first match I had that night against Dave Finlay. So I wanted to invite him out here, look him in the eye like a man, and congratulate him. Finlay comes out cautiously. I watched the show, you know, he explains. I grew up in the business, and I've been a fan for literal decades. I know what happens here, Randy. You're going to shake my hand and drop me with an RKO, aren't you? Randy smirks and follows up, well, if you think that's what I'm going to do, then why are you out here? Because I'm Irish, Finlay retorts, and we Irish face things head on. We don't back down from anything, so if you want to do this, we can do this. But I'd prefer to be upfront about it. Orton takes a long look at Finlay to consider what he says, then holds out his hand anyway. Finlay sighs and takes it, but that RKO never comes. Orton just walks up the ramp, smiling and clapping, leaving Finlay in the ring, amused. Elsewhere on the show, Sheamus finds Nick Aldis backstage and expresses that he was so impressed by Finlay and Orton's match that he wants to see it again. He's willing to put a shot at his Intercontinental title on the line to the winner at Money in the Bank. Aldis agrees that given their placement in the King of the Ring tournament, they are logical top contenders for the belt, and he agrees to the stipulations. He makes the match for the following week. In the SmackDown next week. In the main event of that show, Finlay counters an RKO and catches Orton with the Irish sweepstakes to win the shot at Sheamus. Afterwards, Sheamus, who was on commentary during the match, enters the ring to congratulate his future opponent, but their handshake quickly turns tense as they stare into each other's eyes with competitive intent to close the show. Following week on SmackDown, Finlay and Sheamus have a contract signing for their IC title match at Money in the Bank. Finlay talks about what a privilege it is to be fighting for a belt his father was unable to win, and what an honor it is to be facing a champion on the level of his fellow Celt. Sheamus looks a tad perturbed, but he says he too is honored to be facing a fellow Irishman for the title. Should be a good one, fella. They both put pen to paper without incident, but Finlay beams and works the crowd as Sheamus gives them the side eye. Lyra Valkyria on that show wins a number one contendership match against Bianca Belair to face WWE Women's Champion Tiffany Stratton at Money in the Bank. Next week on SmackDown, Finlay and Valkyria beat Sheamus and Stratton in mixed tag action when Valkyria takes advantage of miscommunication between Sheamus and Stratton that plagued the whole match. Sheamus drops off the apron in disgust with how Stratton has been ordering him around the whole match, and the momentary distraction is enough for Valkyria to wrap her up in a small package for the victory, giving her and Finlay momentum into the premium live event. Afterwards, Finlay and Valkyria share a flirtatious glance at each other as they back up the ramp. Money in the Bank, Finlay and Sheamus are given 25 minutes to kick the stuffing out of one another, with Finlay finally getting the better of Sheamus by ducking a brogue kick, only to hit one of his own, and follow that up with the Irish sweepstakes for the victory and the Intercontinental Championship. He celebrates all the way up the ramp as Sheamus looks distraught in the ring. Elsewhere, Valkyria nearly defeats Stratton to win the Women's Championship, but ultimately fails when she hits her head on an exposed turnbuckle out of view of the referee, setting up the prettiest moonsault ever for the pinfall loss. Following SmackDown, Finlay has mic time to address the crowd and expresses his disbelief that he's already Intercontinental Champion 3 months after debuting. Sheamus' music hits, and he approaches the ring, but Finlay cuts him off before he can say anything. Hey, you know what? Before you come out here and say your piece, I want to thank you for the opportunity you gave me to achieve my dreams, he said. The fact is, you set this up. You went to Nick Aldis on my behalf and allowed the opportunity to have the match with you in the first place. So thank you. Sheamus looks annoyed, but is cut off again before he can retort. So from one Irishman to another, I am so grateful. Thank you so much, he says sincerely. Sheamus answers quickly, knowing he could be cut off again any second now. You're welcome. And you know what? Initially, I was kind of upset. After all, the Intercontinental title was the last piece of my Grand Slam journey, and it took literal years for me to make it happen finally. But you're right. The reason I'm standing here without the title I worked so hard for so long is because of my own actions. So I can't be mad at you, fella. I can only be mad at myself. Out of nowhere, Sheamus tags him with a brogue kick. But that doesn't mean I'm going to take it out on myself, he says to the barely conscious Finlay. No, you're still going to get that bit. So here's the thing, Sunshine. I've got a rematch clause. It's going to be you and me in a rematch for the Intercontinental title at SummerSlam. He throws the mic at the down Finlay's head and walks back up the ramp. Later in the show, doctors are checking on Finlay's condition, making sure he's not concussed after the microphone shot, when Lyra Valkyria walks into the room to console him. He says he's okay. She says she's glad because she felt they had really good chemistry last week in their mixed tag match and wanted to know if he wanted to explore that chemistry further in the future. He smiles and said he'd like that. He ends the segment by complimenting her black hair tie. Is that velvet? He asks. Yeah, do you like it? Yeah, it suits you. She smiles and leaves, and the segment ends. Next SmackDown, still wearing the black velvet headband, Valkyria accompanies Finlay to his non-title match against Andrade, which he wins in a back-and-forth 15-minute contest. Finlay wins by pinfall after the Irish sweepstakes. Valkyria is thrilled afterwards and makes a show of holding Finlay's hand as they walk back up the ramp. Following week, Finlay accompanies Valkyria to her triple threat match against Chelsea Green and Bayley, with the winner getting a shot at Stratton at SummerSlam. She gives him her headband to hold during the match since he seems to like it so much. The match ends in a no contest when Sheamus comes to the ring and initiates a brawl with Finlay that spills into the ring. The chaos causes the ref to throw out the whole thing. The brawl ends with officials tearing Sheamus and Finlay apart, with Sheamus grinning ear to ear as the show goes to commercial. After all three women entered his office to plead their case, Nick Aldis makes a ruling that since the match ended without a winner, Chelsea Green, Bayley, and Lyra Valkyria will all face off against Tiffany Stratton in a fatal four-way match with the women's title on the line at SummerSlam. This seems to satisfy all of them, but Stratton, also in all this office, who throws a hissy fit. Following SmackDown, Sheamus makes quick work of Carl Anderson in about 4 minutes, then gets on the mic to challenge Luke Gallows on the spot. He beats him handily, too, in about 6 minutes. He gets back on the mic and speaks directly to Finlay. I know you're somewhere in the back watching, listening, he says. I want you to take a good long look at what I did to your buddies here. I know you all run the same club, but make no mistake about it. If you were thinking about calling on them for help, he says, grabbing a chair from ringside, I don't think you've got the luck of the Irish helping you out, fella. He beats the crap out of Gallows and Anderson until a gaggle of referees comes and stops him. Only then does Finlay come out, being held back by more officials to explain his tardiness, to confront Sheamus. They brawl, but are once again pulled apart with SummerSlam on the horizon. And now I need some water.
Okay.
All right, SummerSlam night 1, because it's 2 nights now. Sheamus and Finlay have a very physical match where Finlay retains the Intercontinental Championship, but only by the skin of his teeth. At one point in the contest, Sheamus is in control on the outside of the ring and confronts Lyra Valkyria, who had accompanied Finlay to the match, as she goes to check on him. He doesn't lay hands on her, but does lock eyes with her for an uncomfortably long time. The finish comes when Sheamus sets up for the bro kick from across the ring, but once again locks eyes with Valkyria for just long enough for Finlay to dodge the kick when it comes and hits an acid drop, here renamed the Irish Step Dance, for the surprise victory. SummerSlam Night 2. Lyra Valkyria loses her bid to win the Women's Championship when she's a fraction of a second too late to prevent Bayley from pinning Green after a rose plant. She's visibly frustrated afterwards, cursing her bad luck and stopping just short of throwing a fit. Following SmackDown, the show opens with Lyra Valkyria in Nick Aldis' office pleading her case for one more shot at the women's title. Before the GM can answer, Tiffany Stratton barges in and demands a rematch based on the fact that she wasn't the one pinned. Aldis said they'll both have a shot at getting a title opportunity when they compete along with the rest of the SmackDown women's division in a battle royal in tonight's main event to determine who will go on to face new champion Bayley at an as yet indeterminate future date. The women stared each other down as the show rolls into the opening music. Later, Finlay is seen backstage with Valkyria as she does some shadow boxing in the hallway. He assures her that if she wants him at ringside for support, he's ready, willing, and able. In truth, I've become rather fond of you, he says. She blushes, smiles, and sheepishly agrees. The main event takes up the last half hour of the show, and Finlay is on guest commentary for most of it, standing and cheering every time Valkyria eliminates someone, which happens 3 or 4 times. Stratton and Valkyria are the final 2 combatants standing when all is said and done, and Stratton sends Valkyria over the ropes, though she manages to catch herself from falling and stands on the apron. As Finlay once again stands to cheer her on, Sheamus appears in the front row of the crowd to attack him from behind, choking him at the announce table. Valkyria is shocked and instinctually sits down on the apron as if to intervene, though doesn't because she would be eliminated, but hangs onto the top rope in doing so, kind of accidentally eliminating Stratton when she charges and falls over the pulled down rope and falls to the floor. Finlay manages to break the chokehold and enters the crowd to fight Sheamus all the way back to the back as a confused and distraught Valkyria is declared the winner. Following SmackDown, Nick Aldis calls Finlay into his office and informs him that Sheamus had demanded one more match with him. He said that while he's made the match for Clash at the Castle, Belfast, he's allowing Finlay to choose whether or not he wants to put up the Intercontinental title, given he's already beaten him with the belt on the line twice now. Finlay accepts and agrees to the title shot on one condition. He's allowed to have his father corner him for the contest. Aldis smiles, accepts, and tells him he'll inform Sheamus immediately. Later on, Sheamus beats Apollo Crews with a bro kick in under 5 minutes, then gets on the mic. I made a mistake last time of not giving you my undivided attention in the ring, Finlay. It's a mistake I don't intend to repeat. So you want your doddering old pa at ringside in Belfast? Fine by me, fella. It'll just serve as more motivation for me to focus on beating you, knowing I can embarrass you in front of him, in his hometown, in front of his countrymen. So let's do this right and sign on the dotted line next week, shall we? He throws the mic down and leaves the ring as the announcers confirm to the viewers that next week's episode will feature another contract signing for the match between Sheamus and Finlay. Next SmackDown, Lyra Valkyria accompanies David Finlay and gives him a kiss before his opening contest against Johnny Gargano. After a back-and-forth match that goes about 15 minutes, Finlay eventually gets the pin with the Irish sweepstakes. Coming back from commercial, we catch up with Finlay and Valkyria as they walk back in the locker room area. She asks him to accompany her in her upcoming match against Candice LeRae, like she did for him just now. But he tells her he has to shower up and get properly dressed for his contract signing, and he just won't be able to make it in time. He apologizes and kisses her again, telling her she's got it under control, that he has to hurry up or he won't make it in time. He closes the door behind him, leaving her disappointed. Lyra Valkyria wins her match against LeRae, but there are several times where LeRae comes agonizingly close to stealing the upset win from her, to the point where even as she heads back up the ramp after her victory, she looks shaken. The contract signing goes about as well as these things tend to do. Sheamus signs first and immediately tosses the contract at Finlay without saying a word. Finlay replies, "What? Nothing to say? You've been hounding me for all this time, attacking me at nearly every opportunity, and now all of a sudden you're, what, nonchalant about this now? What gives?" All Sheamus retorts, annoyed, is, "Just sign it, will ya?" Resigned, Finlay acquiesces. He gets up, shakes Aldis's hand, and leaves the ring, and only then does Sheamus say something else. "You don't know it yet, fella, but signing this was the worst mistake of your life. I'm going to embarrass you in Belfast and out you for the fraud you are. I guarantee it." With that, he flips the table out of spite and leaves the ring through the crowd. SmackDown, the go-home show sees Finlay and Valkyria team up to take on Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae. The husband and wife team actually take the win here with when Sheamus appears at the top of the entrance ramp. He does nothing but observe, but it's enough for Finlay to get distracted on the apron and miss the hot tag that Valkyria was desperately looking for. LeRae hits the wicked stepsister, and it's over. Finlay realizes all too late and goes back to apologize to Valkyria, while Sheamus laughs and walks to the back. Clash at the Castle, Belfast. Sheamus regains the Intercontinental Championship in about 25 minutes. The finish comes when JD McDonough and Finn Balor run down to the ring after a rough bump to try to screw over the younger Finlay, but the elder Finlay drives them off and chases them away from ringside with the shillelagh. As David gets up to goes to set up Sheamus for the Irish step dance, however, Lyra Valkyria grabs a hold of Finlay's legs as he steps off the ropes, allowing Sheamus to reverse the move into the white noise. As the referee finally comes to, Sheamus hits the brogue kick for the win and the belt. Valkyria looks conflicted at the end, and Balor and McDonough return with Finlay's shillelagh, a trophy from the fallen elder Finlay, who the camera shows beaten and bloodied in the back hallway of the arena. Following SmackDown, the show opens with the women's title shot Lyra Valkyria was promised against Bayley. She wins the belt after about 18 minutes of back-and-forth action when JD McDonough and Finn Balor come out from nowhere to distract the referee, and Sheamus slips Valkyria the shillelagh. She hesitates for a moment, but ultimately uses it, clocking Bayley with it and ditching the foreign object before the official turns back around to count the 1, 2, 3. The show comes back from commercial, and Valkyria, McDonough, Balor, and Sheamus are all standing in the ring together. That men, now noticeably wearing black velvet armbands that match Valkyria's headband. Sheamus grabs a mic and explains their motives. "No, David, this is all your own making. You see, you came in here with this highly talented talent. You spent a lot of time on the indies, made it big in Japan, and then you finally find yourself here. That's all well and good. In fact, you're a hell of a talent, and honestly, I respect you for all of that. What really, he says, gesturing to his compatriots, couldn't abide was this whole fake Irish thing you've got going on. Sure, your pa's famously from Belfast, but you're not Irish. Not really. You were raised in America. Hell, I did some digging and discovered you were born in Germany, of all places. Fact is, despite wearing all Irish colors and naming all your moves for the aisle and carrying this around, you don't truly know the first thing about being Irish. Because just like I bet a bunch of these loser fake Irish fans here's ancestors. Their parents up and left Ireland when things got tough. Ours, though, ours ancestors stayed put. They dug in the dirt and lived through oppression and damn near slavery at the hands of English oppressors. JD, Finn, and I lived in Ireland through the Troubles, for God's sake. Meanwhile, you were here, comfortable in your American home, shielded from the very things that made us who we are as a people. You're not Irish. You're a pretender. And frankly, we just got sick of it. Finley finally comes out on the stage, looking to go at it with his accusers, but is immediately accosted by ring officials and security guards. Sheamus laughs and continues. Now, you may be wondering why you're being held back in this moment. You see, before you signed the contract for our match at Clash at the Castle, I made sure to have my lawyers add a clause in there that stated if you lost the match, you'd be banished from SmackDown. And we couldn't have done it without your pretty Colleen here. So desperate was she not to waste her last chance at the Women's Championship that she made a deal with us for it to make it happen at your expense. So take him away, boys. And irate Finley is carried off by security as the three men sing together. But give you excited from the nation to be spent far away from the land, far away from your friends and companions, betrayed by the Black Velvet Band. The last line of which they point to their armbands. The Black Velvet Band is what they'll refer to themselves as a unit from here on out. Noticeably, though, Valkyra doesn't join in the revelry, instead looking on in concern, but not doing much else. Flash forward about a month on Raw. After being missing for TV for nearly a month, General Manager Adam Pearce announces that he's reached a deal with David Finlay, and although he may be exiled from SmackDown, Raw will welcome a former Intercontinental Champion with open arms, starting on next week's show, where he'll be a guest on the Grayson Waller effect. Raw. Grayson Waller hosts the debuting David Finlay, who expresses frustration that he can't get any satisfaction over what's being done to him. Waller pushes his button, saying, yeah, but didn't they kind of have a point, though? I mean, you claim to be Irish, but as far as I can tell, you seem to be about as Irish as McDonald's. Finlay gets in his face and headbutts him, sending him careening over his talk show host table before leaving the ring in disgust. Next week, David Finlay beats Grayson Waller by disqualification when he hits the Irish sweepstakes on him, but Austin Theory breaks up the pinfall. They beat him down after the bell and leave him laying after Theory hits him with A-Town down. The next week, Finlay approaches Adam Pearce and asks for another match with Waller, but Pearce says he isn't really feeling like handing out favors like his SmackDown counterpart does. Here on Raw, you've got to up the ante a little bit to catch the general manager's attention. An exasperated Finlay says he'll face both Waller and Theory together. He doesn't care. Pearce is satisfied and makes A-Town Down Under versus David Finlay in a handicap match for the following week's Raw. Following week, A-Town Down Under defeat David Finlay in a handicap match after the numbers game proves too great for Finlay to overcome. Also, they cheat. Waller hits Finlay with a chair behind the referee's back that allows Theory to connect with A-Town Down for the win. Afterwards, the former SmackDown Tag Team Champions really rub it in by setting up the chair over Finlay's body and conducting a mock interview as they would on the set of the Grayson Waller effect before leaving him to his misery. Next week, Finlay opens the show and addresses the crowd. You know, things haven't been going my way lately. Seems everywhere I go, I have a target on my back, and I'm getting pretty tired of it. Last week was a wake-up call, though. E-Town Down Under, you showed me that I might not belong here after all. Not if I can't beat you two clowns. So how about we run it back tonight? And if I can't find a way to beat you two, I'll just leave WWE altogether. How does that sound? Waller and Theory answer via Titantron and accept his challenge. Easy peasy. Later on, Finlay comes down to the ring to meet A-Town Down Under, but stops halfway down the ramp with a mic in hand. Okay, so the deal was that I needed to find a way to beat you or I'd quit, right? And then you two accepted. But the thing is, I didn't say this was another handicap match, did I? What if the way I beat you two is to find a partner to help me do it? Seth Rollins' music hits as he's announced as Finlay's partner in this tag team match, which takes all of about 3 minutes as Rollins and Finlay handily defeat the cowardly heels and send them packing. Rollins later goes up to Adam Pearce and personally recommends Finlay for the Raw versus SmackDown Survivor Series team, and Pearce says he'll consider it. Okay, next week on Raw, Adam Pearce decides to put David Finlay in the last qualifying match to represent Raw in a traditional 5-on-5 elimination match against Team SmackDown this coming Saturday. His opponent, The Miz. If he wins, he joins Seth Rollins, Rey Mysterio, United States Champion Ludwig Kaiser, and Drew McIntyre on the team to face Randy Orton, Shinsuke Nakamura, and all three members of the Black Velvet Band. Finlay, now knowing that he'll get a chance at revenge against the Black Velvet Band after all, steamrolls The Miz in 4 minutes to gain the spot on Team Raw. At Survivor Series, Team SmackDown defeats Team Raw. The Black Velvet Band avoid any and all contact with David Finlay anytime he tags in until their partners are eliminated and are left with no choice. Finlay works each one of them over in turn, but doesn't eliminate any of them, instead falling victim to the numbers game and some timely uncaught cheating in the end. The sole survivors, the Black Velvet Band. Raw. Finlay is involved in a mini tournament to determine the number one contendership for the United States title. He seems distracted through most of the bout, kicking himself for not getting his proper revenge 2 nights ago, but manages to get a win over Pete Dunne to advance in the finals of the tournament. Next week, Finlay faces Braun Breaker in the finals and gets his rear end handed to him throughout most of the match before taking advantage of Breaker colliding with the ring post to regain momentum. At one point, Breaker bails to the outside, prompting Finlay to roll him back in, but as the referee is paying attention to Breaker, Finlay is attacked from behind by Bronson Reed, who hurls him into the steel ring steps, then powders before the official realizes his involvement. Finlay manages to break up the count at 9, but immediately gets speared out of his boots for the loss. Bronson is seen heading back to his rental car with his luggage later, but Kathy Kelly catches up with him before he can leave. She asks what that was all about. Why did you attack David Finlay just moments ago? Reed just smiles and says, you'll find out, but on our time, not yours. The next week on Raw, the Grayson Waller Effect hosts Bronson Reed to see if any more answers can be gleaned about the prior week's assault. But before Reed can say anything, Finlay tries to charge the ring, only to be held back by extra security Grayson Waller hired to surround the ring in the event that something like this happened. As soon as they restrain him, Reed says that he may be the guest on the show, but he brought a guest of his own too, and casts a FaceTime call from his phone to the Titantron, which I'm going to pretend is a thing you can do. It's Sheamus. Hey, fella, it's me. I bet you're wondering why you're seeing my face on Raw, ain't you? See, we thought we'd taught you a lesson by having you exiled from Friday nights, but Survivor Series made it clear to me that you hadn't listened to anything we taught you. But then it dawned on me. We told you that you weren't truly Irish, but maybe we didn't make it quite clear enough what that meant. So let me try to hammer it into your head. Being Irish at its heart means to suffer and to come out the other side a warrior. And trust me, you will suffer. The call ends and Reed further explains, so my dear Davy boy, you see, the Black Velvet Band is no longer content with you being gone from SmackDown. They want you gone altogether. So they put a rather large bounty on your head. I intend to collect soon, but not now. Security? Security drags Finlay away as the Aussie cackles menacingly while the show goes to a commercial break. Coming back from the break, Finlay goes to Adam Pearce's office. He says he's going to collect on this bounty in his own time. I don't think so. I want him in the ring tonight. Can we make that happen? Pearce cocks his eyebrow and asks, are you sure about this? Positive. Pearce makes the match, but his eyes clearly tell the audience he feels Finlay is signing his own death warrant. Bronson Reed versus David Finlay ends in disaster for Finlay. Reed takes the early advantage and never really lets it go, save for a hope spot here and there. He demolishes Reed with 3 tsunamis to end it, and Finlay is carried off in a stretcher. It's the last time we'll see him for 3 weeks, selling internal bleeding and bruised ribs from the beatdown. January 5th, Raw. Bronson Reed has a main event match for the United States Championship against new champion Braun Breaker. After about 13 minutes of big, meaty men slapping meat, Reed seems to have things in hand after throwing Breaker into the turnbuckles with a belly-to-belly suplex. He sets up for the tsunami, but David Finlay's music hits, and the man himself comes out onto the stage in street clothes. He doesn't attack, but the distraction is enough for Breaker to throw him off the top rope, then hit a spear to retain his title. Afterwards, Finley grabs a chair and chases Reed out of the ring to end the show. Following week on Raw, Finley starts the show in the ring with a mic. While I was convalescing at home, rehabbing the injuries I sustained at the hands of Bronson Reed, I had a lot of time to reflect about things. And I came to a couple of conclusions. The first one is, and I want to look directly into the camera here because I know Sheamus and company are watching, and I want them to hear me when I say this. The Black Velvet Band were right about me. I realized only too late that I'd wanted to be here in WWE so badly that I was willing to sacrifice whatever I needed to do to get here, even if that meant leaning on my ethnicity as a crutch. I shouldn't have done that. I had no right to do that, and I apologize to those who found my pandering offensive. But it only came from my own insecurities, not any hateful place. That brings me to the other conclusion I came to. You see, while I have the Black Velvet Band to thank for waking me up, I also have them to blame for making my life a living nightmare for the past several months. I may have been naive, but they knew what they were doing the whole time. They schemed and they played their games and they went behind my back to get rid of me because they knew damn well their time was nearly up and that I was knocking on their door ready to take their spot here. It might have meant some of what they said about my behavior, but the reason they conspired against me was out of jealousy, nothing more. And that's a wrong I'm tired of enduring. That's a wrong I'm going to right myself. So I'm declaring my eligibility for the Royal Rumble in a few weeks, he explains, so that I can finally get my hands on them again and give them the ass whooping they've got coming. But first, Bronson Reed, we need to finish our little disagreement. So why don't you and I next week have us a little street fight, and we'll finish this before I go finish them. He throws down the mic on the mat, poses for the fans, and leaves. Later on, a brief backstage promo, Reed accepts his challenge, saying he'll finish the job he started a month ago and change his life forever. To me, though, it'll just be another Monday night. Next week on Raw, David Finlay beats Bronson Reed in a street fight in around 18 minutes. It's a wild brawl that goes all over the arena before ending in the ring with Finlay hitting a modified version of the no longer being called Irish sweepstakes on the open seats of two chairs facing each other. David Finlay is among several superstars the next week that cut promos on why they're going to win the Royal Rumble this Saturday. Finlay is the only one who doesn't mention winning a shot at the world title or going on to WrestleMania, instead reiterating his goals to beat the crap out of the members of the Black Velvet Band. At the Royal Rumble, David Finlay comes in at number 25 with all three members of the Black Velvet Band in the ring, and he takes advantage of the others in the ring pairing off with them to get each member one-on-one. First eliminating McDonough, then Balor, then finally Sheamus, before being eliminated himself by eventual winner CM Punk. Following week on Raw, Kathy Kelly interviews Finlay backstage and asks what's next for him now that he's finally gotten revenge on the Black Velvet Band. He says he's moving forward with his career and wants to focus on winning the United States Championship he was cheated out of the opportunity to challenge for, calling out Braun Breaker for a match for the belt. Following Friday on SmackDown, the Black Velvet Band is shown in Nick Aldis's office, irate, swearing up and down that it's not fair and that Finlay has to pay. Aldis says his hands are tied. The Royal Rumble is an interpromotional event, and what happens, happens. Sheamus tells him, I see what this is. This is just more anti-Irish oppression by an Englishman. It's not enough your lot subjugated mine for centuries. You've got to take it out on us now, too. Aldis protests, but the band storms out of his office in disgust before he can mollify them. Following Monday on Raw, Braun Breaker accepts Finlay's challenge in a backstage promo, admitting that he saw the tape of what happened in their previous match, and it hadn't sit well with him that he won the title shot and subsequently the belt in a manner that cast any doubt on his worthiness. He wants to correct that mistake and will gladly accept Finlay's challenge at Elimination Chamber. Following SmackDown, Sheamus and company beat three local wrestlers in quick fashion, then Sheamus gets on the stick. This is just disrespectful, he says. What kind of competition are you giving us here, Aldis? What, do you think we're not worthy of better competition? What's that all about, eh? And here, that's all I had written down. So we're going to get there. So, bullet points. On SmackDown, the band gets all up in arms about Aldis and claiming that he's oppressing them or whatever. And so he feels like he needs a moderator to step in and figure stuff out for them because he's not being heard. And so maybe they'll listen to somebody higher up on the food chain than him. So at Elimination Chamber, you're going to have a sit down mediated conference. And the mediator is going to be Shane McMahon. Elsewhere on Raw, Finley and Braun Breaker have a friendly tag team match against two locals. They beat them up pretty easily, but are constantly competing over who can beat up the other guy better and more. The end comes when they both pin the same guy at the same time. They look at each other. At Elimination Chamber, Finley loses to Braun Breaker in a hotly contested match when McDonough comes in and screws him over. But this is after the conference where, much to everybody's chagrin, and it's a weird kind of thing, but Shane McMahon comes in and he's trying to do his thing where he's all like, oh, I'm Shane McMahon and everybody likes me. Yeah, the Black Velvet Band does not take that, and they beat him very badly, claiming the whole time that he's the fakest Irishman of them all. He's indicative of what they're all against. They threatened to throw him off the Titantron as a callback to the times where he did that on purpose. Unless they get what they want, and ultimately what they want is for Sheamus to get one last shot at David Finlay at WrestleMania. The lead up to that, Finlay is like, I'm done with you, but if you want to do this one last time, we can do it one last time. But I get to choose a stipulation. Sheamus is so pissed off that he agrees to anything. Ultimately, he makes it an I Quit match. So that's going to happen at night 2 at WrestleMania. Meanwhile, Lyra Valkyria is becoming increasingly dependent on the Black Velvet Band to retain her title this whole time. And eventually, it comes back around to Bayley getting the title shot at WrestleMania, having won the Royal Rumble for the second year in a row. No, not in a row, but her second time. She loses to Bayley at night 1 at WrestleMania when she refuses the Black Velvet Band's help. But later on is consoled by Becky Lynch, who is hosting WrestleMania. She's back there stage and said, you did what you had to do. And you know what? You and I have been through some battles, and I know who you are at your heart. You don't need them. You don't have anything to be ashamed of. And this whole thing you never seemed to really be into anyway with the Black Velvet Band. I don't see why you hung around them in the first place. David Finlay walks by in the back of the shot, not paying them any mind, but Lyra looks over her shoulder, pining. She's like, yeah, I know what you mean. Thanks, Becky. Night 2 happens, and it's an I Quit match. There are no DQs. David Finlay is constantly beat on by all 3 of the members of the Black Velvet Band. It looks like he's just going to get completely wrecked until Lyra Valkyria comes out and makes the save, hitting McDonough and Balor both in the testicles with the shillelagh. To guarantee that they will not be a factor. After that, she tosses the shillelagh to him, to Finlay, who bashes Sheamus in the head 3 times with it, and then using it as leverage in a clover leaf to make him quit. The following night on Raw, it all comes to an end when, because it's the Raw after Mania, everybody's kind of allowed. And Sheamus, the Intercontinental title was on the line for that too. So new champion David Finlay comes out, and Sheamus tries to get a contract with him, or a rematch with him, but David Finlay turns the tables like, "Hey, you remember that time that you put that clause in the contract where I had to leave SmackDown? Well, this I Quit match was an I Quit match for you. You saying I quit in the match means you quit WWE."
Oh,
And that's how you write him into retirement.
oh my God. Okay.
And that's where it ends. So you make a new star, a couple of new stars really, with a David Finlay and Lyra Valkyria. You bring them full circle on a whole thing. You write Sheamus's retirement and get him the Grand Slam in the process, which he needs. He doesn't need, but he deserves. You've got some commentary on what it means to identify with an ethnicity, and you've got him as with a song banished to the one show that has all the Aussies on it. That's why I put all the Aussies on on one show.
All right. I like it. I like it, especially with the payoff. The payoff is good. The I Quit.
I did not realize it was going to take that long. I apologize so much. But I wanted to make a year-long thing because that's how you build somebody, and that the long-form storytelling is where it's at. So
mine could be told long form, but I definitely didn't put that much work into it.
Yeah, I'm obsessive. Nobody has to be like me.
I
don't recommend it, in fact.
So mine the basis of mine basically is I wanted to bring a wrestler back who I haven't seen in a while, who I really enjoyed. But I wanted him to have um kind of a unique, maybe weird storyline. And then also do it in a place where it wouldn't normally be done, but could be played to still be cool in the way that the company normally is. So what it's based on is Katie and I watch a lot of cartoons. We watch a lot of cartoons. We watch like there are comfort shows, like if there's nothing, if we're just chilling on the couch next to each other, playing on our phones, we have a cartoon on in the background. American Dad, King of the Hill are like the top two, but we cycle through Cleveland Show, and Futurama is a big one for us. We love Futurama. So Futurama is kind of the basis of this storyline.
I dig it. Okay.
Now this is going to be kind of a sci-fi-ish storyline, which you would normally think, let's put that in WWE because they already do kind of the weird stuff. They had the Undertaker forever. They have the Wyatt Six going on, which are kind of creepy in a weird way. Kind of supernatural, but not really. Normally you would do this stuff in WWE, but I want to do it in AEW just for a change in AEW's landscape a little bit. Just to say, we're the best wrestle, but hey, let's have a really cool angle inside we're the best wrestle. Where that's mostly based on an angle. The person I'm going to use is proficient in wrestling, very enough to be where he belongs in where the best wrestle. You could definitely make a case for him to be there, but not the type of angle that they would normally run in the company. So, to start it off, we'd be at some place like North Carolina or Chicago, someplace where they run one of the old buildings that is technically a new arena on top of an old arena. Like
Greensboro or something.
Yeah, like Greensboro or Cobo Hall, like where what's standing in Cobo Hall now or something like that. Where like the building is the original foundations are still kind of there. They're just buried underneath the building. So someone, I'm not sure who, maybe the conglomeration, because this might fit with them easily, are for some reason down in the bottom of the building. Maybe they're looking for Samoa Joe. since he still hasn't come out of that wall or something. I don't know what they're looking for down there, but they're down there and they find a chamber. And the chamber has a date on one side that says like 1/1/1920 or something like that. And the other side is a countdown clock, and the countdown is at next week's Dynamite. We'll say. Now, I kind of want it to happen on this week's Dynamite, but you have to build a little anticipation for it. But either way, once you have a bowel section of the building, that kind of gets transferred to every building that you go to. Ask Mankind.
Yeah.
So yeah, right. So they build a lookalike room, whatever. They put this chamber in it. The clock runs down, and out pops Aiden English from the Vaudevillains. Okay. And
Yes.
Aiden English is full on in wool tights and short boots and a tiny little championship belt. And he's talking like he's from the 1920s, and because he is. He got shoved into this chamber by Tesla or somebody that we'll use a famous scientist from the era or something like that. But he's shoved in this chamber by Tesla, and it was set for like 100 years. So maybe it says 1924 or something. So he's shoved in there for 100 years. He pops out. He was the world's heavyweight champion. And now he's popped out, and it's suddenly 2024, and he's in a wrestling company in 2024. Wool tights, short boots, tiny belt, whole nine. He can talk the way he talks already. He can pretty much wear the same gear he's already wearing. I mean, he fits this gimmick. So he is basically our Philip J. Fry. He has been frozen for 1,000 years, and now he is going to have to come to live and assimilate and operate within a completely alien environment to him. So it's basically going to be like a big fish out of water thing. Except for mine, I mean, we're going to go fish out of water. You can pretty much make any conjectural assumption you want to about the in-between time from debut to payoff, where oh my God, why are your title belts so fucking huge? Or like this is my world championship belt. And then, like here's, like Omega standing next to him with his, and he's like, but this is a world title belt, and or what is catering? We didn't have that, just all the little shit that they wouldn't have had at a circus in 1924 for the wrestling sideshow that they were doing. What do you mean $100,000 a year type stuff? Like just basically anything. Even promo. Well, that's where you cut, like, Renee explaining to him, like, this is where you stand here and we're going to talk. I'm going to ask you questions, like everything, like everybody being nice to him. RJ City sits him down for AEW and he just doesn't get it, but it still makes it amazing because RJ City would make it amazing. So, like just all that, just all the fish out of water tropes, basically. But here's the payoff. All right. In my fantasy world, Kenny Omega is a face AEW world champion. Okay. Because I love Kenny Omega and I don't like booing him. And he's so good at being a heel that I have to boo him when he's a heel because he's very hateable. But I love him as a face. Get well soon, Kenny Omega. I hope you're back soon.
Absolutely.
So anyway, in this storyline, we're into 2025 now. Kenny Omega is the world heavyweight champion at AEW. He's a face. He's taking on the Young Bucks and Jack Perry kind of as a trios thing. And he's had an ever rotating set of partners, a couple guys from the conglomeration here and there, maybe Private Party at one point. He's had the Acclaimed, he's rotating partners, nobody real steady. But then he brings in Simon Gotch because he's like, I know who I want to be my partner, but I have to figure out how to make him and I work really well together. So I need a bridge. So he decides he wants Frozen guy, Aiden English, to be his partner. And he needs a third guy. So he brings in Simon Gotch to be the bridge because he's like, this is the old schoolest guy that I know that isn't, literally old or dead. So bring him in. He's going to be my bridge between Aiden and I to conglomerate our styles in such a way that we work effectively as a trio and can beat the Young Bucks and Jack Perry at All In this year. The run up to that is the Young Bucks and Jack Perry saying, we innovated wrestling since his time. We have literally changed the business in such a way that this man could not be on your team and y'all win. It's impossible. You have like he thinks a cartwheel is amazing. There's no effing way that this guy is gonna, come in and do anything to us. Like, if he was wrestling Gorgeous George in 1950, maybe, blah, blah, just the whole thing, right? So then we get to All In. All right. This whole time they're the whole run up, they're picking on him like that. The whole run up. And the whole time, Kenny Omega and Simon Gotch are trying, like, training segments and all this other stuff, trying to bring his wrestling skills into the 21st century. And they're doing the thing. And like, finally, right before All In, probably the Dynamite or maybe the Rampage before, and just like a little, like, 30-second clip, they're maybe sitting together and he's just like, you know what? I get it. I finally understand. And they're okay. And the Bucks, of course, maybe a response segment. Ha ha. Yeah, he doesn't understand. It doesn't matter. We're going to beat you two and the ancient old frozen guy. We're going to beat you and Encino Man or Philip J. Fryer, whatever they want to call it. They could go 100 ways with it, but we're going to win. Get to All In. Bucks make their entrance with Jack Perry. They do the whole elite thing. They get the whole Carry On My Wayward Son, because as much as I hate them, I love it every time I hear that song on a wrestling show.
Yeah.
So they get the Carry On My. They do it specifically to piss off Kenny, because that's a thing they do with Kenny. So they do it with Jack.
Yeah.
Jack in Kenny's place, and they do Carry On My Wayward Son, and just an antagonistic entrance, right? Then Simon Gotch, Aiden English, and Kenny Omega make their entrance, and Kenny Omega comes out first, and they do the whole North Carolina and all that, the big Kenny Omega entrance. And then his music continues to play, and Aiden English and Simon Gotch show up, and they're dressed exactly like Kenny Omega. Painted tights, flashy boots, like the whole, they look like 21st century wrestlers. I mean, like, maybe there's a little throwback, like maybe his tights are painted to look like they're like the wool with the different legs than the trunks or whatever. But you could tell
he's wearing a bad wig.
Yeah, maybe a bad wig, but but you could tell, like, Kenny took them to buy work clothes or whatever, like, so they did totally in there. And then they get in the ring with these guys and have a match to the ability that we know the three of those guys have, versus three people like the Bucks and Jack Perry. And that's how they blow it off, like, he's gotten it. And so at the end of the year long or half a year cycle to All In, he's assimilated. We can then progress, because this will, the fish out of water thing, and just like the vaudevillains did, it will eventually run its course, and people will tire of it in a way, like you got to go away, you got to change, or you got to go away point.
Yeah,
we will come to that, but then you blow it off at All In, and then he can move forward from there. He can get his own tights or whatever after that point. The whole point was to show an assimilation level at the end of that. And then, then he goes on, and you've created a guy who's gotten a rub from Kenny Omega and the Bucks by, possibly, maybe he pins Jack Perry in the match or something like that, but he's gotten the rub, and you can send him up, or actually, you can send him up, you can give him a few months, and then you can bring him and Gotch back as the vaudevillains, which will get a huge nostalgia pop. So, I mean, there's plenty of ways to play the after, but the big one is the, fish out of water all the way up to this point, and then he assimilates. And the assimilation is a big surprise. Like, he does say at some point, like maybe in a very small segment on a Rampage, we want to make sure that, like, I don't want to knock AEW's viewership at all, but like, we want to make sure the least amount of people see it as possible. If it is on TV, that he is snapped into getting it. And then have the surprise entrance where, oh my God, he looks like Kenny Omega.
Might as well just do it online then.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Like a Twitter interview or something. Like, yeah, that'd be fine. But yeah, that was basically it. Like, guy gets frozen in the 1920s. He's the world heavyweight champion. He pops out in 2024, and we kind of get a live comparison of the differences between the beginnings of the business and now, as well as a really great fish out of water story with kind of a sci-fi niche. in a place where they don't normally do things like that. But because we're going to involve the Elite and Kenny Omega, it's going to get the proper attention and rub that it
I
would
mean, they
work.
came out as Ghostbusters once. I think it's
Yeah,
fine.
exactly. That's why I would. That's why I choose that group of guys because like there's a lot of people out there, even guys in AEW who are way too on the cornet bend where they won't do silly stuff like that.
Yeah,
But some of the best wrestlers in the world, like Kenny, will do the silliest shit.
yeah,
And I'm not gonna
because
knock him for it. That's Kenny.
because
That's
they're
just who he
yeah,
is.
it's because they're good enough that they know that they can be taken seriously again. Like
Yeah.
they can you it's a level of confidence in one's ability that you need to have. Like the people who don't want to go do that are wicked insecure.
Yeah,
Like
I think so
it,
too.
I mean to a like if it was under Vince, yeah, I see it because he'll pigeonhole you.
Yeah.
But like, every once in a while the fans want to see some personality out of you that you can have fun, especially for, I mean, not so much for the heels. I think you don't do that with heels at all because you want them to be booed. You don't want people to identify with them if you can avoid it. But yeah, with baby faces, people want to see them having fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's
I
one of the
yeah,
reasons I got so tired of Mox. It's like, oh, like
he's always
can
so
you show a
serious.
little humanity, please? Like, you know, I don't know.
Yeah. A perfect example of this, especially as it relates to Moxley and how he could change to maybe incorporate something like that, is Randy Orton. He's a perfect example of this
Yeah,
because Randy Orton is a bad motherfucker. Like we know it. He's built the equity.
yeah,
Like if you're being challenged by Randy, like people could say all day, we knew he wasn't going to beat Gunther, at Bash in Berlin. But with the way WWE books things, sometimes they could have totally made Gunther go down in his hometown and had Randy Orton
yeah.
win, and it would have been believable because it's Randy Orton. But also, he's often shown being a mischievous little shit and having fun with
It's
things
true.
like that sly. Everybody's seen that sly Randy Orton grin. If you've watched enough of him at all, you've
Yeah.
seen the sly and you've seen the mischievous actions that come thereafter. And part of the reason why he's called the Viper and the Predator and all that, the Apex Predator and all that, is because he's kind of a mischievous little shit, and he'll get you when you least expect it. If Mox could add a little bit of Randy Orton to his repertoire and maybe take off that seriousness edge a little bit. But that's honestly about him. What's wearing me out is like you're always so and like a
Yeah.
badass, and you never sell, and
So dour.
like I mean, yeah, cool, bro. Like thank you for not bleeding every chance you get anymore. I really do
Yeah.
appreciate that. But like, and then I
Sure,
respect the
Renee
man.
appreciates it too.
I'm sure she does. I respect the man as a wrestler. He is a great wrestler,
Yeah.
but my
His
God,
character
man.
needs a refresh though, and his
Yeah.
presentation needs a refresh.
Yeah,
I'm sorry guys that we went back to harp on this. I didn't mean to just go back and harp
no,
on
I didn't
Moxley,
want to either, but it'll happen
but
sometimes.
no, back on topic though. No, I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. You know why I love it is for all the reasons that you said, but also because I really do believe that wrestling can be anything. Wrestling can be
Yes.
anything.
Mhm.
The only thing stopping wrestling from being anything are two things: budget, which is a
Yeah.
concern, and the willingness of an audience to buy in.
Yeah.
But you can get around the first if you have the second.
That's true.
So, like,
Yeah.
if you have the faith of your fans that they're willing to suspend their disbelief and willing to buy into what you're selling, then you can get away with a lot. You can get away with tons of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, and you know, wrestling can be presented one way in one company, and that'd be the only way, and that's fine. You can have the other way. You can go the other way and have it be the smorgasbord, a little bit of everything, and that's
Hmm.
great too. There is room in wrestling for weirdness. One of my favorite wrestlers is Danhausen. Like
Yeah. I love Danhausen.
he Danhausen's fantastic. Honestly, I would be content if for the rest of his days in the wrestling business, he did literally nothing but show up every once in a while and curse somebody, have it work, and then leave. I don't care about seeing him wrestle. I care about him getting paid. I care about seeing him and having him do his shtick, his very nice, very evil shtick, and getting paid. That's all I care about.
That being
There's
said, Tony
room
Khan booked Danhausen.
for real. For real. I miss Danhausen.
Book Danhausen versus Tony or versus Ricky Starks. I'll take it.
Yeah,
I'll take
I
it
will
because
definitely
of
take it.
just the two of them. But yeah, I mean, make Ricky Starks beat Danhausen so many times that he becomes evil Danhausen.
Yeah,
Like,
very evil
oh,
Danhausen.
very evil Danhausen. You know, get Ricky Starks a mouthful of teeth once or twice, and then put him
Yeah,
over. Keep it going. Like,
yeah,
I'll take both of them back on TV over
yeah.
some of the things I'm seeing. Learning Tree. Yeah. But
Point
anyway,
being
yeah,
is that there is room for wrestling for all different kinds of characters, and it doesn't need to be so restricted to one box. There's
yeah.
room for total. I mean, this that was the point of this exercise. Really, it was to come up with something outside the box. And you
Mm-hmm.
absolutely did that.
Right.
I love the reference. I love the direction. I love the people involved in it. Loved me the vaudevillains. I was a huge vaudevillains fan.
Dude, I'm a
I was
huge
I was
vaudevillains mark. That's
big
why.
big guy, big theater guy. So it obviously spoke to my aesthetic. Um, but and the the things that I enjoy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was fantastic.
Heck yeah.
That was great. That was great. It was probably a little too long. Sorry guys, but that's mostly my fault. That's
It's
in fact,
all
it's all
good.
my fault.
This
It's
is
all my fault.
this is still my favorite segment of the week.
Oh,
So
Adam can't shut up. Oh, that's new.
well, that's why we're on a podcast because we can't shut up about wrestling. So
It's true.
that's
It's
kind of
true.
the it. I mean,
Kind of the point. Yeah.
heck yeah. All right. Well,
Luckily,
thank
you'll be
you.
able to get this split up into clips on YouTube. So
Oh yeah, it'll be easy. It'll be easy. Well, I mean, this whole segment will be one clip, but it'll be easy anyway. Anyway, thank you everybody for joining us this week. That was the Smark Foundation podcast, and we will be back right here next Monday to cover all of this week's AEW and WWE action. You guys be safe. Remember to love one another, and as Simon might say, goofy wrestling for life.
for life.